Hey guys, welcome out to Revolution. We're on part 14 of examining TurretinFan's response concerning Revelation 16:5 by Nick Sayers. And so this is part 12. I'm pretty sure that TurretinFan has just done a part 14 today. And so we want to catch up. So I'm just going to get straight into it. If you're not really sure what this is about, sorry about that. TurretinFan is examining a book that I wrote in 2019. So I originally wrote this in 2015, turned it into an article in 2016, tried to hand it to James White. He refused to read it and said he would never read it. And then I was approached by someone who said they wanted to make it into a book. And so I turned that into a book. And so that's been available for about 4 years now. And so we've gone through several different things, but my last video was a little bit of a comedy of errors because the first part I'd actually already, I spent about an hour going through material I'd already gone through. And the last probably hour, it went for nearly 6 hours. It's a long time. And so the last video, the last part of that video was responding to TurretinFan in a video that he had done 2 weeks prior. And I had done a response video a week before, but in my mind, for some reason, I thought that he had already looked at my video. So it was a little bit chaotic, and that's why I'm actually just trying to keep up to date with what's being said, because I am listening through what TurretinFan's saying like today, but then I have to go back, like these videos are like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And so it can get quite muddled. And so I'm going to try and keep on top of these. So let's just begin. We're at the 50-minute mark, and we've only got about 25 minutes to go on this video. So let's put it on 1.25, and we'll see if we can zip through some of this material.
Mistake someone could make when they remove the markers indicating that there's a conjectural limitation there. If it's a mistake, it's a mistake. But the mistake is not arguing in favor of conjectural limitations for some things and rejecting them for other things. And so, on that point, I just insist, Nick, you are mistaken to assert things like, and White adopts readings that with absolutely no evidence whatsoever and staunchly defends them. That's not the case. Likewise, White advocates some very obscure readings with little or no evidence, including what he himself would consider conjectural limitations.
And so TurretinFan in this video went to a great length to sort of defend James White and say that he doesn't follow conjectural limitations. And so if you haven't watched the previous two videos, which is like 2 videos of 11 hours worth, so you mightn't have. And so basically to cut it short, TurretinFan was sort of basically saying that he knows roughly that James White follows what's called the tenacity of the text, that he doesn't follow conjectural emendations. But then in my book, I have a section where Jeff Riddle and James Snap Jr. were taking James White over the coals over his acceptance of the Nestle Alarm 28 text, which had conjectural emendations in it. And so one of the things was we were pressing James White to sort of have an answer for this, or to bring it up, or to talk about it, because he kept bringing up Revelation 16:5 and saying it's a conjecture. This mars the text. This causes King James onlyists to be, deceptive, and are not people who are interested in truth, and all the rest of it. And so we were pressing him, saying, well, your own text has this problem. And so in the meanwhile, we basically proved that there was no conjectural emendation in Revelation 16:5 at all. And that's been completely dismissed. And so everything James White said about that in his book, which was basically about conjectural emendation, and anywhere in his book where he alludes to conjectures, he says to read the Revelation 16:5 section. And so so what's basically happened is TurretinFan has a sort of roundabout idea of what James White believes. And then I was showing a clip where James White sort of said, I don't follow those conjectures, but didn't really follow the crumbs in between. And so This is where it can get to the point where I'm looking at an old video. I have corrected this multiple times, and I'm sure TurretinFan's quite aware of it by now. And just showing where James White was completely wrong. He didn't even know where these conjectures were. But then once he did know, he didn't want to mention them. And he still defended them. And so at the end of the day, it's quite a mess, and it looks very bad for James White. So I had that section in my book. Now, when I wrote my book in 2019, just before it got published, James White did an about face and basically said that he doesn't follow the Nestle-Aland conjectures, so he follows the Tyndale House text there. And we were like, oh, okay, so you're going to follow the Tyndale House, what, in every reading? What about, John chapter 1, verse 18, where it has, God, the only begotten God in the Nestle-Aland, but in the Tyndale House, it's only begotten Son. Are you following that reading? And so it opens up a whole can of worms, and it shows the inconsistency of James White, and also shows that Jeff Riddle schooled him in 2014, so 9 years ago, about these conjectures, and was absolutely correct, but didn't get an apology or anything like that. We don't expect apologies from James White at all. Not that we're really even looking for them, but it would be nice to sort of, for someone who is claimed to be a soul winner and someone, who's trying to convert people out of cults. If we're in a cult, King James only cult, like he suggests we are, then it would be nice for him to treat us pretty much about the same as he does with Jehovah's Witnesses or Roman Catholics or Muslims. To go, oh, hey, hang on, we made a mistake here. Let's correct it. Or I was wrong there. Or he simply just doesn't admit when he's wrong. He would just avoid that, and then later on try to cover it up and make out that he's always had that position. So TurretinFan is sort of it's quite amazing to watch people fall for the bait that James White lays out. So James White will just say something about someone, and everyone just seems to believe it. Like he'll just say, oh, Jeff Riddle, this, and this. And you just see for the next 5 years, Jeff Riddle mopping that accusation up. And I've realized that things that he said about me, people, even TR people, were like, oh, well, that's true of Nick Say. And I'm like, hang on, James White said it. Please don't listen to this guy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know me. He has no idea who I am. But the damage is done. These slanderers, these wolves in sheep's clothing, they go around doing this to Bible-believing people. And, for whatever reason, he's worked on the NASB committee as an advisor. And so I guess he had to jump in the critical text camp, but both feet. He wrote the book, The King James Only Controversy, and dedicated it to Bruce Metzger. And so he's in that camp. And so anyway, let's just let Turretin continue. So he's still talking about this sort of stuff that we've sort of mopped up over the last, 2 or 3 videos.
That's not true, Nick. You made a mistake on that. And better for you to just acknowledge the mistake than to try to insist that I'm calling you a liar. Because at some point, when you do realize that it's wrong and you keep saying it, then you would be, if that were to continue. I just trust that it won't, now that you're more aware of what I'm referring to. And
I'm quite aware, too, that some people follow TurretinFan and go, wow, what he's saying about Nick Sayers is true. Because they wouldn't even bother watching my videos. They just listen to what TurretinFan says. And so you'll go down the track and then someone will just say, oh, you said this and that. It's like, no, I didn't. It's like, yeah, on TurretinFan's thing. It's like, oh, yeah, well, I know he said that about me, but it's not true. I did, 2 hours solid on explaining myself. That, it's quite amazing, some of these accusations and things like that. Now, I know TurretinFan, I don't think he's actually going out of his way to, say things, but when you look at this whole section, it would be good if he does acknowledge the faults of James White instead of just sort of trying to defend him all the time.
But that brings us to the section I wanted to address today. The section I wanted to address today is section 3.3, where, according to Nick, Jerome has shalt be. So this is reading from, sorry, the camera's probably not picking things up well. But anyway, it says Jerome has shalt be. Jerome, 27 March 347 to 30 September 420, confirmed that there were a number of various Latin editions of the New Testament which differed in both translation and content before and around 405 AD, when Jerome finished his Vulgate. Most of these we do not have today. John Wordsworth, who edited and footnoted a 3-volume critical edition of the New Testament in Latin, revealed the like phrase in Revelation 1:4, which is.
Okay, so just before we go through this, I just want to show you something that I think TurretinFan might have missed. Okay, so just listening to the way that he's examining through this information, I do have a footnote here, and it says, it must be acknowledged that some of the quotations allude directly to Revelation 16:5, others to I am and Jehovah, and some to both. Okay. Due to the related nature of these instances, all are considered significant in this examination. So I think TurretinFan he might have read that, but I think he's forgotten this, because when I'm going through his information, I've got things that are dealing with I am, Jehovah, and things that I believe are related to Revelation 16:5 as well, but not all of them. And so, in a sense, I've put all the information that I have scoured the internet on, and some of them are directly relative. Like, say, the quotations of Abetus of Libana, of Hamer Halberstadensis, of the Ethiopic, well, they're all in the book of Revelation, right at chapter 16, verse 5. So you can't, it's unmistakable. But some of these others are saying, okay, the name of Jehovah is the one who was and is and shall be. And it's like, well, that's a significant thing. It mightn't even be talking about Revelation 16:5, but it's clearly, it's relative there. It's relative to the whole theme of the book. And so I think perhaps this should be maybe in the main text, in a next edition or something like that, because I think TurretinFan, like when he's going through this, he's like, how is this related to Revelation 16:5? How is this? And it's like, well, what I had in my first article was probably about like 6 or 7 things written down. And then by the time I've written the book, people were sending me lots of information. And it was like, okay, well, that's a reading. It's probably more related to I am being expanded, or Jehovah being expanded, or this is the name of the Tetragrammaton. It means the one who was and is and shall be. And it's like, okay, well, that's relative to what we're studying. So I'm putting that in there as well. So I guess what I find is I'm putting more information than I probably should. And I guess being dragged over the coals for that, because, sometimes it's like, okay, well, like in this book, I didn't have to go in depth into where Lord appears in the book of Revelation. Okay. But I did. I went through all that, just sort of trying to explain Beza's side of the story. But then because I've explained all that, then it's sort of like, well, this is Nick Sayers' theory and all this. It's like, well, no, all I've done is taken it to the logical conclusion. I was sort of playing devil's advocate and going, okay, well, if I was a contra, I would want to know where else Lord appears in the book of Revelation. And I had people on Facebook asking me that. So I was like, that's actually a really good question. I'll answer it in the book, and so, but then it's like, I've given too much information. People critique that and go through it like it's like something I've made up or whatever. But when we've got these things here, I mean, this is pretty clear. Let me just say this once again. It must be acknowledged that some of the quotations allude directly to Revelation 16:5, others to I am and Jehovah, and some to both. So when he's reading through and it's like, well, this is to do with I am and Jehovah, but not to Revelation 16:5. I don't know why Nick's put this in the book. It's like, I clearly said that this is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And so it can get a bit annoying sometimes going through that. But I would just say, I wouldn't think that TurretinFan's read this and decided not to do that. But I guess the thing is, it can make me look like I'm a liar. And also that I don't recognize that, just any quotation that matches up with Revelation 16:5 oh, that's a Revelation 16:5 quotation. No, sometimes it's to do with I am, sometimes it's to do with Jehovah, sometimes it's to do with Revelation 16:5, sometimes to do with both. And so I've clearly acknowledged that. And so I think because listening to the sort of attitude, it's like, oh, well, we're looking at this early church writer. I think Nick's wrong here. This is not to do with Revelation 16:5. And it's like, yeah, but it's clearly to do with I am. It's clearly to do with Jehovah. It's clearly to do with the past, the present, and the future. So this is talking about all that we've talked about previously, about the name of Jehovah, the name of I am being the triadic declaration. And then when we hit those ones, which are unmistakably Revelation 16:5, you can go, okay, yeah, I guess people around that era were referring to Jehovah as that. And it's no wonder people saw it as a holy name. It's the name of Jehovah, so there's a whole bunch of reasons why I've put all of that information in. Now, in my first initial article, I probably added twice as much information than I really needed to. And I've put the footnote there clearly modifying that and saying, well, not everything is absolutely relative to Revelation 16:5, but it still is to our whole entire study. So I guess it's a bit like, I've done a lot of studies on the Comma Johanneum. Now, there are quotations of, parts of the Comma Johanneum where it might say, these three are one. Okay. Now, that is a direct quotation of 1 John 5:7. Now, but there are places where some people say, and these three are one, which are not a direct quotation, but you still talk about them. If we were to look at, say, Grantley MacDonald's book on the Comma Johanneum, he talks about, things that are allusions, things that are direct quotations, things that are, later insertions and things like that. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just giving all the information that I have. I'm saying, okay, this is what I found so far. Some relate directly to Revelation 16:5. Some relate to the I am being expanded, basically equaling what's quoted in Revelation 16:5. So whether it's relative or not, I'm not sure. This is worth further investigation. Maybe people who are more versed on the early church writers can jump in and look at these things, or look at translations. Look at the way the Greek and the Hebrew, the Greek and the Latin are translated. And so anyway, I just sort of throw that in there because I did feel that when I was going through some of TurretinFan's latest videos, he was sort of like, what's this got to do with Revelation 16:5? And it's like, I clearly state at the beginning. So this is a footnote at 128. And this is the first section when we're looking at external evidence and pre-Beza illusions. And so I've written, this chapter contains a basic chronological list of the evidence White refuses to look at and simply dismisses as irrelevant to our topic at hand. And so, and that's true. James White he said publicly he will never read my book. He refused to take it from my hand, the article, and he said he refuses to read it. Okay, so I'm not lying. I'm not being a jerk. I'm just saying the facts. I saw him face to face and handed it to him. And he didn't want to read it and said he said he doesn't want to take it, and then announced on the dividing line he will never take it and never read it. And it's like, okay, so this is information that James White refuses to look into. So the whole thing is James White was refusing to look into the fact that Jehovah was the past, the present, and the future. I am past, present, and the future related to Hover. He was arguing against this. He was saying it's not related to Hover. And so I might just get that up there, because I think one of the things is with TurretinFan, I know he's friends with James White, but at the end of the day, I guess if this was a critique of someone else, I think he would be a little bit more neutral. But because it's James White, it's like Nick Sayers is talking against him, and it's like, You know, if it was someone, like maybe he just needs to pretend it's someone else. And so I clearly have here a photo of James White basically saying here, I have scrolled back to find your comment as I find it impossible to defend the TR reading of Revelation 16:5 consistently. So prove Hosios is an omnisacra. And then, look, he says there is no Hova in Jehovah, which should be pronounced Yahweh. And I don't know if Twitter's messed with the vowel pointings there. But so he was saying there's no Hava, there's no Haya, that's not related. It's just the vowel pointings of Adonai. So I think I've completely destroyed that type of concept. And so, you know, having Hava, meaning to be or to exist, the past, the present, the future, related to I am, I mean, to me, that's very clear. And that's something that I just wanted to bring out in the book more and more thoroughly. And so when I'm bringing up witnesses, I'm acknowledging that some are directly to do with Revelation 16:5, others to I am and Jehovah, and some to both. So that has to be taken into consideration when we're reading through this. Now, another thing is, last time we were looking at the Chi of P47. Now, I just went to KJVtoday.net website. And so when we look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 17, now the author of this website he's an intellectual guy. He's a polyglot. He speaks several languages. He wants to remain anonymous because of the toxicity of this debate, which I don't blame him. But you look at this, he's talking about which art and wast and art to come in Revelation 11:17. And this is what's missing in the critical text, kai ho echomenos. And so, but when you look through, one of the interesting issues is it has the kai after the ho'en kai ho'on kai ho'en, which art and wast. And it says Ephraimi Rescriptus, Vulgate manuscripts also have the extra chi. So this is interesting because this is the sort of thing that people look at and they go, okay, well, this is, there is a conjunction there. What's it going on to say? And then there's just a word missing. Echomenos is missing. Okay. And so, and talking about the chi, there's quite a lot being said here. And so, and how this was also adopted by the 1904 patriarchal text of the Greek Orthodox Church. So I just sort of point that out that, other people are talking about the chi, but this is in a different context. This is in a different triadic declaration. And so I just sort of felt like TurretinFan was sort of making out that this was just a really insignificant chi here, but other people are looking at other triadic declarations and going, well, it's significant that it has a conjunction there in a lot of the manuscripts. And so I did go through that last time, but also that the Reformation Bibles all basically have the conjunction there. And so anyway, let's go through what TurretinFan is saying, because I am actually rehashing some of the things that I've already said.
And which was, and which is to come, sometimes is rendered in Latin as qui est et qui fuisti et futurus as, instead of the Vulgate, qui est et qui erat et qui venturus est. That's from John Wordsworth, Novum Testamentum Latinae, Volume 3, 422 and 424. Nick says, note that Wordsworth assumed that the quote was from Revelation 1:4, but it reads just like Beatus, whom we shall examine soon. Jerome said, in Sancti Eusebii Hieronymi Epistulae, Sic et mille annorum spatia apud te, qui semper es, et futurus es, et fuisti. And Nick offers the translation as, so also the thousands of years of it to thee, you shall be, and you are, and have been. So I took a peek at what this is. This is from Jerome's letter 4, I believe. It's a letter to the bishop, or sorry, to the priest, Cyprian. It's ad Cyprian presbyterum, but presbyterum at this point in time meant priest, not presbyter anymore. And I took a look at the relevant section, and the relevant section says, you who always provoke us to repentance through the prophet, saying, return, sons of men, we ask, as I have already said before, that you do not make man to be retained in eternal humility. For we do not think that what you promise is long, giving us salvation after many times. Compared to eternity, the length of all time is short. For in your sight, 1,000 years are considered as one day. And he immediately rebukes himself. I spoke badly. One day, and the length of 1,000 years with you is calculated as the span of one day, when I should have rather said the span of one watch, having the length of 1,000 years. The night is divided into 4 watches, each of which are calculated to be the span of 3 hours. Therefore the Lord came to the apostles sailing in the 4th watch. Just as therefore one watch of the night quickly passes by, especially tiring out those keeping watch, so too are the spans of 1,000 years considered by you, who always are, and will be, and have been, to be for a very short time. What he implies, as yesterday's day, which has passed, let us feel according to what the apostle writes to the Hebrews. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he goes on. So according to what Nick is arguing is that there is a use here of you who always are and will be and have been. And that I assume that what Nick is trying to say is not just that he's using this form of you shall be, but that this has something to do with Revelation 16. And herein we start to see one of the problems with this particular argument. The first problem is, this is not identified by Jerome as a citation of Revelation 16.
So you see what I mean? Like every church writer he's going through, he's like, what is this relative to Revelation 16? And I'm like, well, clearly I've made it very clear in my book that some of them are absolutely alluding to Revelation 16:5, as TurretinFan will get to. Some are alluding to Jehovah, and some are alluding to I am. Now clearly this is alluding to the past, the present, and the future, with the concept of Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's talking about the past, present, and the future. And so there are relevant themes there. And so and this has to do with the nature of God, most probably the name of God. And so it just so happens to be a theme that's in the book of Revelation. And most people, even when they go to Revelation 1:4, they're like, well, if you actually talk about the name of Jehovah, it should be the one which was and is and shall be, which is Revelation 16:5 reading. But usually, like in the Latin, venturus est means is to come, or echomenos in the Greek is to come. And so that's more like an event, the past, the present, and Christmas, a past, present, and an event which art and was and shall be is the past, the present, and the eternity future.
It's not a commentary on Revelation 16. He seems to be spending time commenting on the language of, I believe it's language of the Psalms here. One day with you is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like a day. I don't remember which Psalm it is off the top of my head, but
which is talking about the eternality of God. And so that's what's being described in Revelation 16:5 in the Textus Receptus is the eternality, the past, the present, and the future of God, which is to do with the name of Jehovah. It's to do with I am. And so
there's discussion here of that. There is an explicit citation of Hebrews. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the statement that so too are the spans of 1,000 years considered by you, who always are, and will be and have been, isn't a direct quotation of a Latin translation of Revelation 16:5. In other words, this isn't a witness to an alternative reading of Revelation 16:5, for the primary reason that this added semper, which semper es, you who are always and will be and have been. So the order is different. Are, will be, have been is different from the proposed order in the TR.
Will be and have been. It's very close. Well, the chiastic structure in the triadic declarations in the TR. I'll just grab a bit of a screenshot of that. So Revelation 16:5. Okay, so this is the chiastic structure. So we've got it there in Greek, we've got it there in English, but this shows the tenses. So we've got present tense, past tense, and future tense, which is now, which was in the past, and which is to come in the future. Now, the one that we usually say is was and is to come. Now, that's the middle one, the past, present, and future. But all the rest of them say the present, the past, and future. Okay, so and that's called a chiastic structure. I'll just read this. Very interesting input, Nick. Not much I hardly know any about. However, I still find it interesting and something I need to further look into. At least I have a point to start. Got to go. Night, mate. Okay. Yeah, good to see you, Brad. I was thinking about you when I was watching the grand final the other day. It was pretty good. So, King James only. So Bob is in the house. He says, where can I get a PDF of the Biblica Hebraica Stutgartensia, please? You might try my website, which is tr.org.au. And if you go there, tr.org.au, and go to the books section, you'll probably find it there. If not, I would just suggest, if I was going to look for that, I would just type in the exact thing you're looking for and put it in brackets or in quotation marks in Google, and write PDF outside of the brackets. And so, sorry, you can't see what I'm looking at. So there's quite a lot here, mostly to do with New Testament Greek, but you do have websites, conventional bibliology. That some of these websites just have tons and tons of material. Some of them are like this page that I've got here, but with a whole bunch of other material on it. So some of it's James Snaps. So yeah, I would say go through these links here, but other than that, I would just search for it, and hopefully that will help you. Okay, so let's get back to TurretinFan.
There's the addition of the word always, which would be different from the TR. And there's no indication that this comes to...
So the thing is, it doesn't matter if it's got always or other things like that. It's, So I guess one of the things is, like, say someone like Stephen Boyce, like I take my hat off to him for the work that he's done in some of the early church writings. Now, I actually like the way that he goes through some of the early church writers, because he acknowledges Byzantine readings in the early church writers, which a lot of people just don't do. And he acknowledged that at basically critiquing Bart Ehrman, that there were no Byzantine writings sort of before the 4th century. He was just like, no, hang on. In my studies, I found these writings. And so, but what we see is he will say, well, sometimes there are direct quotations, word for word, verbatim, it's unmistakable. But then there are like a paraphrase, and people will say, just say I was quoting, Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. I might say Jesus Christ. Well, he is the same yesterday, and also miraculously he is the same today. And we all know that we will see his face in eternity forever and ever. And so I'm obviously quoting that, but I'm elaborating on it. I might be preaching, or I might be writing a book or something like that. And so, but it's definitely an allusion to that verse. And then there are other times when just half a verse is quoted, or even just a word that's just a lot of people might know. Like even Paul, when he was in the book of Galatians, he's like, well, Jesus Christ, born of a woman. Like, I mean, anyone who doesn't know the Bible would just be like, why are they making it it's special that Jesus is born of a woman? But if you understand the whole thing about the prophecy in Genesis with the seed of the woman and the concept of the virgin birth and everything like that, it makes perfect sense. But he just adds that, born of a woman. If you didn't know the context of everything, you would just say, well, it's just really nothing to do with anything, And so this is the thing. Like I'm sort of hoping that TurretinFan sort of at least goes, okay, because I'm acknowledging from the get-go some of these are strong allusions, absolutely verbatim. Some of them are to do with the name of God, the name of I am. Some of them are to do with the name of God, name of I am, and you can't dismiss that perhaps, it's related to Revelation 16:5. Sometimes you're like, yeah, that's related to all three. And so you would sort of have a bit of a graph where you'd go, okay, well, yes, relative to Revelation 16:5, I'd give that a 50% there. Or yes, I'd give it 100%, like say the Ethiopic reading or the Beatus of Libana reading. It's in the commentary and in the main Latin text. And so those things have got to be taken into consideration. So say like this thing of Turretin, it's talking about the past, the present, and the future. And it's using the words shall be, and it's got to be taken into consideration what I've written about it, that I was saying this is exactly what Beatus of Libana in his Latin has. So we'll see that soon. But like you've at least got to go through, like you can't just put a big red cross against everything here. You know what I mean? That seems to be what TurretinFan's doing. No illusion there. No illusion. And it's like, well, no. I think that someone like TurretinFan would probably benefit from even listening to someone like Stephen Boyce and reading through some of the studies that he's done on the early church writers, and because I've written this for James White, knowing that James White would understand that what I've said there is not all of these are direct quotations, but some of them have these paraphrases, some of them have allusions, some of them have that concept of the expansion of Jehovah and things like that. And so
from Jerome quoting from anywhere in Scripture, it doesn't indicate that he's so if he is quoting from Scripture, it's a paraphrase of something, but of what, we don't know. Is it a paraphrase of of Revelation 1:4? Is it a paraphrase of something else? We're not told. And without knowing what it's a paraphrase of, we would just be left with speculation, and therefore it's not a great witness to this text. All that it might be is a witness that someone says that God also will be, but that's not particularly the disputed point. So we're kind of left in an awkward position on this particular point, 3.3, section 3.3. What do we do with Nick's assertion that this is evidence of a different reading? Well, I mean, the short answer is this: Jerome doesn't say that this is a reading of Revelation 16. In this letter, which I guess...
And I would just be careful there, because most early church writers don't say, well, this is a direct quotation of Paul, or this is, and so sometimes they just brush past things, but they quote Mark, they quote Matthew, they quote Hebrews, they quote the Psalms, and so that's why we have to go through and decipher things, So I'm just putting it there for people to go through and go, yeah, okay, well, let's investigate this. Let's look further at this and I'm also showing that Beatus of Libana has that exact same reading. So as we'll see, I'll let TurretinFan finish his sentence or finish this section, and then I'll go through and read through my book, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
There's different numberings of the letter, but whether it's letter 4, letter 140, letter 137, I see, or even whatever letter number this is, there's nothing in it that tells us that this is coming from Revelation 16:5. So he says Jerome has the exact reading of shalt be. Well, he has et futuras est, but not in the context that would be necessary in order for this to be a quotation of Revelation 16, and therefore having the reading of Revelation 16:5 as it is found in Beza. So Nick's argument is, again, White and his crew would be cringing, and I guess we'll have to demonize Jerome like they do Erasmus, Beza, and others. No, you don't have to demonize Jerome. We can also see that there have been different Latin translations of the verses involved. Romasius, bishop of Hadrumetum, wrote a commentary on Revelation around 552 AD and used the Latin word pius instead of sanctus. Not sure what the possible significance of that is.
Well, it's just pointing at the fact that there are different ways of looking at the Latin, because some people are like, well, it's not exactly how the Latin is quoting it. Well, sometimes that can show and prove that the Latin is a translation of the Greek, and so we've got to acknowledge where there are variations. I mean, TurretinFan just spent half a video showing us where there were some deviations here and there and all the rest of it, and pointing out that they were significant. And so I'm like, okay, in the Latin, there's this difference. He's like, what's the signification of that? And it's like, how come you're allowed to show a whole bunch of, where variants are and things like that, but when I do it, what are you talking about, Nick? Why are you saying that? And it's like, okay, well, I'm just showing all the evidence, and I'm pointing out things. And so what I'll do, I'll let TurretinFan finish, and I'll read through in context exactly what I've said.
But so be it. At least with Primasius, we're talking about a commentary on the text. Jerome's letter isn't a commentary on the text. Many manuscripts were destroyed, likely reflecting an inability of believers to renew and preserve true manuscripts due to widespread persecution. So I believe that God preserved his word. I don't believe that this just came back into existence in the time of Beza. I don't know Nick's position on that. I don't know. Excuse me. I think Nick's position is that this is a nomina sacra, and that the Greek, because it maintains the Hosias, which for Nick is a nomina sacra, that therefore it has been preserved. It just wasn't well understood. Nick goes on,
and I would say that's a good representation of my position. And so the position that I hold to is that we're looking at Latin texts. We're looking at persecution of people in the Latin churches, and so there are periods of time when persecution was so fierce that and Bibles being burnt, etc., that you see certain trends stop. You see certain scribal habits change, and so
to say persecution, Judah's widespread persecution and martyrdom in early centuries. Persecution occurred in the 3rd century under Roman Emperor Decius, and destruction of scripture copies was a major goal of vicious empire-wide persecution in the early 4th century by Diocletian and Galerius, who sent out Roman soldiers to destroy all text copies. This persecution was concentrated in the Eastern Empire, where the traditional text, the ancestor of the Textus Receptus, was the standard. But as we can see, White's assertion is crumbling, and the list of people with the non-nomina sacra reading here is mounting. Except that we haven't even demonstrated a first case of this being a nomina sacra reading. Let's just see. There is, trying to check to see if I can find any other. Sometimes you can find some additional comments of note. For example, there's sometimes good commentaries on Jerome's works, and there's a nice French commentary on this particular letter. but I'm not seeing anything in it that tells us any more insight on that point. So let's have to leave that aside. Paul, let's see. TF, would you rule out the possibility of a true reading being present in a non-Greek Bible text and at the same time being absent from any extant Greek manuscript? Yes, I would rule that out. Not everybody agrees with me on that point, but I do. I would rule that out. I do think God preserved his word in the original language. Now, it might be...
So that's interesting because there's 100 places in the Nestle Aland text where there are readings that are basically a mosaic, where Vaticanus doesn't read that way, Sinaiticus doesn't read that way, but when you join things together, they read that way. And so that's why we call it the Frankenstein monster text. You know, it's a patchwork, it's a mosaic. And so there's not one manuscript that shows that reading, but you have to amalgamate the manuscripts to have those readings. And so it'll be interesting to see TurretinFan go through those and point out, you know, those 100 places and explain, you know, his either acceptance or rejection of those readings. Thomas Ross pointed this out in his last debate.
A tougher challenge with Hebrew. It's clearly the case that the reformers thought that God had preserved his word in Hebrew and in Greek. But would I be willing to amend the Hebrew based on reasons supported by the Hebrew text and the Greek text, or the Samaritan Pentateuch? That'd be a tougher question because of the different textual transmission of the Hebrew. But my initial point is I'm just going to stick with the Hebrew for now. I'd be interested to read the Greek, interested to read the other translations, but focus on just the Hebrew. I don't think I'll go on in Nick's book right now. I just want to emphasize, so far in this section.
Okay, so he's going to sort of say, you know, what's Nick doing? Why is he showing these other things? And it's like, okay, well, so, you know, the first thing I went through was the and, which is considered quite an important thing because in other triadic declarations, Revelation 11:17, it is there, you know. And so this is enough for the Greek-speaking patriarchal church. I know I've said that wrong. It's late at night here. But they went with the reading in Revelation 11:17 of is to come. So they haven't gone with shall be, unfortunately. But so, yeah, clearly in my footnote here, I was stating that, you know, that it must be acknowledged that some of the quotations allude directly to Revelation 16:5, others to I am and Jehovah, and some to both. Due to the related nature of these instances, all are considered significant in this examination. And so, and the thing is, because James White's like, okay, where are these readings? So I've pointed them out. Then it's like, okay, he's arguing, saying no one has ever said that Haya is related to Jehovah. It's just the vowel pointings of Adonai, and so I'm pointing those out too, like things that basically back up the whole argument that I've been pointing out. So we will get to, you know, very direct quotations of Revelation 16:5, but you can clearly see in the first one it's saying there is the chi, there is a conjunction. It's going on to say something, but then it doesn't say it. And modern texts don't have that. The Reformation texts do. The earliest papyri does. And so, so then he's looking at the second one, shall be. Actually, that's 3.3. Where's 3.2? Yeah, P47. So yeah, 3.1 is just an intro into that. Okay. So yeah, the second one, Jerome, confirmed that there were a number of various Latin editions of the New Testament which differed in both translation and content before around 450 when Jerome finished his Vulgate. Most of these we do not have today. Okay, so what I was pointing out is some of the Latin is changed. Now, if you I guess the thing is, I've written this knowing the end of the story. Okay, so I know if you go down a little bit further, then you have Beatus of Libana here, clearly saying at Revelation. So this is Revelation chapter 16, and that says verse 4, but verse 5 is included in this, and it has it futurus est, which means which have been and will be. So the context reads, just are you, which has been and which will be the Holy One. So it has the future form will be. And so futurus est is the exact equivalent of kai isomenos. Okay. So when you know that's in the Latin, then you're like, well, it's in Jerome. You know what I mean? And so, and then when you know that, you're like, okay, let's look back at Jerome. And so this is probably where maybe I should put all the strong allusions first, or all the strongest ones first. But I've just put them all in basically a chronological sort of sequence, not thinking that people will just read through like, there's no evidence for it in the Latin. What's he talking about here? It's all. No, Beatus of Libana has it. So, Beatus of Libana's commentary goes back to 360, and so even before Jerome. So, but anyway, let's just go back. So, let's read through what I've said here. Now, most of these we do not have today. John Wordsworth, a scholar in Latin, who edited and footnoted a 3-volume critical edition of the New Testament in Latin, revealed the like phrase in Revelation 1:4, which is and which was and which is to come. Now listen to this. Sometimes is rendered in Latin, qui est et qui fuisti et futurus, instead of the Vulgate qui est et qui erat et qui venturus est. So it's John Wordsworth, Novum Testamentum, Latin, Volume 3, 422 and 424. So note that Wordsworth assumed that the quote was from Revelation 1:4, but it reads just like Beatus, whom we shall examine soon. So what I'll do, I'll get another page open here, so that way I'm not flicking back through. So here we have Beatus of Libana. Let's see if I can make these join up. No, maybe I can put them together. Okay, so there we have the Jerome. Oh, is that Beatus? Yeah, so that's the Beatus one. So maybe I'll put that on that side. Just feels better on that side for some reason. So we're looking at et futurus est, and then we see it's et futurus est, the exact reading of Beatus of Libana. So the thing is, Beatus of Libana is seen as one of those quotations where it's like, that's exactly saying shall be. Okay. And so that's the future form of it. Okay, that's fine. And so we've found that reading, which Wordsworth related to Revelation 1:4 and said, okay, well, this is relative to that. And he said sometimes it's translated as et futurus est instead of the Vulgate's other one. So, and he's saying, okay, this occurs in Revelation 1:4. And so let me just read through that again. So I just wanted to really show you that that's the exact Beatus of Libana quotation for the future part of it. Okay. So basically that means and shall be, which is what we're talking about. Okay. The isomenos reading. So if we go through Beatus of Libana, the context reads here. So it incorporates both readings, will be and the Holy One, or shall be and the Holy One. 31 existing manuscripts have the reading in Latin and Futurus Est, which is the exact equivalent to Kai Ho Esomenos, which is what Beza has in Revelation 16:5. So with Beatus's book, there may have been several hundred copies that have been lost in time. So there was 31 existing copies at the time that I wrote my book of Beatus of Libana. Okay, so it's a popular book in Europe. And so, yeah, clearly this is the reading of Beatus of Libana. And so, and shall be holy. Okay. So I took some screenshots of et futurus est, or shall be. So it appears twice in this picture. So it's in the commentary and it's in the photo. Okay. And in the main text, I should rather say. So here is a close-up of the verse in the main text and the verse in the commentary. So we'll see where futurus est is. I think that's it there. And futurus est. And so where is it here? Yeah, it's pretty hard to read this type of Latin. Sanguis, agua, futurus S. There. Futurus, that's like an S, that common thing there. S. So it's not only just in the Latin Vulgate, it's in a commentary that goes back to 360. Okay, so that's a pretty strong evidence, and that's at Revelation 16:5 in the book. Okay, so this picture here is the angel, and so this is the part in Revelation 16:5. So that clearly relates to it. So knowing et futurus est means shall be, you would go, okay, well, when you see Wordsworth talking, whoops, I should just go to this one here. When you see Wordsworth saying that in some of the manuscripts, they didn't have Venturus S is to come, but they had Futurist S shall be. That's significant. And it's worth looking into, it's worth investigating, it's worth thinking about, because this is a triadic declaration. And so, can I find everything on Wordsworth here? No, but it's basically in that context where it has the exact same Latin words. And so Jerome has the exact reading as shall be. Again, White and his crew will be cringing, and I guess we'll have to demonize Jerome like they do Erasmus. But see, the thing is, when Beza has the reading, demonize Erasmus. Okay, when Beza has the reading, demonize Beza. When Erasmus has in his Annotationis that there's something wrong there, and it probably should be the past, the present, and the future, who was and is an Erkomenos, not Esomenos, but Erkomenos. He's got that in his Annotationis, and so then people are like, oh, Erasmus, he was really, slipping on banana peels, didn't know what he was doing. He's probably like Joe Biden, wandering around the print shop, not knowing what he was doing. And when I pointed out the Ethiopic to James White, he's like, what do these people know? And just demonize the Ethiopic. When you read through the Nestle Alarm 28th edition, oftentimes it will have 8th for the Ethiopic. And so they, oftentimes in Hoskia's work, he talks about the Ethiopic quite frequently. Mill in his 1707 talks about the Ethiopic. So when I talk about the Ethiopic, oh, you idiot, would you're going to change it for an Ethiopic? James White was saying this sort of stuff, and it's like, how come these guys can bring up that type of material, but I can't? And how come I can bring up, Beatus of Libana, Homo Halberstadensis, and, very strong witnesses to the reading, but when I point out the Ethiopic, let's just focus just only on the Ethiopic, and James White's like, would you change any other reading in the Ethiopic, to correct the King James? No, you wouldn't. And it's like, I'm not saying that I would. I'm just pointing out, because James White said there was no evidence before Beezer. So I'm like, okay, well, let's see if there's any evidence. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm finding evidence. I'm finding that it's in Beatus Banner, and this exact reading is John Wordsworth was pointing out was in the Triadic Declarations. And he was saying it was in Revelation 1:4. Now, do I have all the details for this? I don't. Now, even what TurretinFan has said, it sounds like he's talking about the eternality of God. Jesus Christ is saying yesterday, today, and forever. And so it does tend to match in with what I'm saying. And so let's just read through this. We can also see that there have been different Latin translations of the verses involved. Primasius, Bishop of Hadramentum, wrote a commentary on Revelation about 552 AD and used the Latin word pious instead of sanctus. Now, TurretinFan was like, well, what's that got to do with anything? Okay, so you're the only one who's allowed to show textual variants, and I can't. I'm just showing all the information. So I've found this out, that there's a commentary written on the book of Revelation, so it's relevant, and he used the Latin word pious instead of sanctus. So what I'm saying is, in the Latin, it's not just exactly like you might have verbum or sermon, sermo for the word. In the beginning was the word. It might be verbum or sermo. And so sometimes this can show you which era something was written in, whether it's from the old Latin, or the Vulgate of Jerome, or commentaries. And so it's quite an important thing, where TurretinFan was just dismissive of that. One of the things is Lorenzo Valla. He believed that Revelation 16:5 was to do with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so, that was another avenue that I was going down, because, he's an intelligent guy. He was like an Erasmus before Erasmus turned up. I think he died about the time Erasmus was born. So these are things that are going to be taken into consideration. There's other people like Manetti. Manetti, about 70 years before Jerome, he did a Latin edition purely based upon Greek manuscripts. So his Latin edition can be looked at as something that is a compilation of Greek manuscripts underlying his text. And so these are all things that, I'm growing in and understanding more and more. So this type of information, to people who are actually studying through this and going, okay, well, let's look at this. Why is this written pious here? Why hasn't it got sanctus? Are these just synonyms? I know they've both mean holy, but could it be that there are different Latin editions based upon different Greek texts? Because sometimes people just think Latin, or they just copied through all the time with Latin. I mean, there wasn't any Great Wall of China in separating Italy and Greece. I mean, they're right next to each other. And you had people speaking Latin and Greek. You had these scholars were intermingling with each other. And so sometimes you had people doing fresh translations of the Latin into of the Greek into the Latin using different words. And so many manuscripts were destroyed, and so we sort of read through that section there. I've written, but as we can see, White's assertion is crumbling, and the list of people with the non-nomina sacra reading here is mounting. So what I've pointed out so far is that the chi is missing from modern Bibles. Okay, they're dishonest in a sense where it appears in the earliest papyri, as we mentioned last time, We went through and showed there's only 4 witnesses of Revelation 16:5 before the 10th century. We look at the 3 earliest witnesses. They are not in agreement. And we see the first witness has the conjunction chi there. So this is important because all of the Reformation texts have a chi there, and they favored that reading. And so even in Theodore Beza's annotations, we can clearly see he has kai haosios here. He's saying that's the usual reading is kai haosios. So the chi there was considered as, the usual publication is kai haosios. So he has the chi there. So I'm just pointing out that in the manuscript evidence, there's a chi there. So to me, that's a significant thing. There are the crumbs of information. Like if you see, say like a baseball bat, okay, you might have, say, 3 parts to a baseball bat. I'm not sure what you would call them, but I guess the first part's the handle. You got the middle part and then the end part. Now, if you've got only a handle there, it's still something. It's still evidence. Now, it might be small, it might be insignificant to a lot of people, but to someone who is looking at these exact words, kai ho esomenos, when you have the kai there in the oldest manuscript, when you have the chi there in all the Reformation Bibles, when you have the chi there, Theodore Beza is saying this is foolish and delusional because it's got a conjunction, but it's causing this problem, and the Vulgate has this problem as well. So it's this problem is going into language editions, and we also see that in the English, we see had and that were holy. Like the bishops, and wast thou art righteous and holy, and so the and was foolish and divisional in the English as well. And so anyway, let's let Turretin continue. So I think you're getting the point where I'm pointing that out, which should be a significant thing. TurretinFan's just written it off and saying it's not significant. So, okay, well, that's fine. And so, and I was clearly pointing out, James White was saying all the manuscripts read O Holy One, which is ho ozios, but it's not true. It's kai ho ozios. And even Beza said that in his annotations. So it's not exactly accurate here, and that's one of the main things I'm pointing out. And so, but then when we get to Jerome, I think this is very relevant. And when we're talking about, Revelation 1:4, which is usually the place where people talk about all the triadic declarations, because it's at the beginning of the book of Revelation. It's like, okay, well, even Theodore Beza in the Revelation 16:5 footnote, he's like, just go back and read 1:4, and you'll get the full understanding of what I'm trying to get here. I mean, he does mention a whole bunch of other things, but it's like, go back and read 1:4, get up to speed with that, and then you'll know what I'm talking about here. So, and it's very clear. Wordsworth was saying the exact reading of shall be, which is in Beatus of Libana, in his commentary and in his Vulgate Latin text, is there. So, to me, this is important. And so you shall be you who are and have been. So now TurretinFan's offered a different translation of that from somewhere. I'll look into all that. But for what he said, as far as I can see, it is related to the past, the present, and the future. It is related to Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. So you can see why I've put it here. It's relevant to what we're saying. Okay. So let's move on.
In chapter 3. In chapter 3, we started with section 3.1, external evidence and pre-Beza allusions. In 3.2, we talked about P47, which has the word kai, and we actually discussed how the other manuscripts that are out there there is a substantial minority that do have this word Kai before Holy One.
And this was seen by Beza, by those people in the Reformation who were doing translations as the correct reading of the Kai. And so they had it in there, even though it looked abrupt, it had this problem, but they still had it in there.
And we discussed whether or not that is the original reading. I don't think it is, but that's a reading at least that has more manuscript support.
But at least you have to admit that James White's saying all the manuscripts say Hozios. No, there are a significant number, as you admitted, that read Kai Hozios. And so, and that's what a lot of that focus is about.
And we discussed the substitution, and we saw that there were none of the Greek manuscripts that had the substitution that Beza proposed.
Why bring that up? Again, it's like, okay, well, I'll bring up all the last 12 verses of Mark. We'll look at Vaticanus and Sinaiticus. We'll cast them aside, and we'll look at all the ones that don't have the omission, and let's just read through them. It's like, why bring that up? Clearly everyone is on the same page there. So bringing it up is it's sort of redundant. So
Beza's view, if it's correct, is correct in view of something other than a Greek manuscript support. Let's put it like that. Now,
okay, so I guess TurretinFan is saying, because we don't have that manuscript with us today, we can never really look at that information as true information, I guess, or count it that we did have a Greek manuscript with that reading.
Again, I have to qualify it. Nick has a theory that would account for the Greek manuscripts. So we'll explore Nick's theory as well in due course. But for now, we're focused on the transmission of any evidence of a version without a nomina sacra form here. We also saw there was one manuscript that actually did have a nomina sacra at Revelation 16:5, and that was the word Lord in one manuscript, which it may have been originally a conjectural emendation by Erasmus, but it does seem to have panned out and is in fact an accurate wording. I thought there's another thing.
So he's saying that Erasmus now had a conjectural emendation and put Lord in Revelation 16:5. I just can't understand. Like I guess the thing is, someone like James White's been saying, the King James, the Textus Receptus, these guys are just constantly putting in conjectural emendations. It's just become something that is in the mind of most apologists. They just go, King James, it's filled with conjectural emendations. We're saying there's zero conjectural emendations. We're saying that your text has two pure conjectures, but also 100 of these mosaic type of conjectures where you have to have two manuscripts combined together to have the exact reading. And so, this whole thing of, these conjectures. See, the thing is, when you, if you're going to count things like parablepsis as a conjectural emendation, it is, in a sense, a conjectural emendation, but not as James White defines it. Because you have a conjectural emendation, something that is based, or I'll read it from my own book here. Okay, so where am I? Let's go back to the definition of a conjectural emendation. Okay. Here. In this period, emendation, the adoption of alternative readings, was done in two distinct ways. Depending on the way these readings were found, they could either be derived from manuscripts or arrived by rational argument. Hence, a distinction was made between emendatio codice ope, emendations by means of manuscripts, and emendatio ingenii ope, emendation by means of reasoning. So these are the two different ways of emendation. But the thing was also, the vast majority of any type of change was in the annotationis of Erasmus, not in his main text. And so this is why I'm just sort of a bit shocked that TurretinFan would just sort of default to like, oh, he probably did a conjectural emendation there. It's like, no. That, don't default to that, you know. Okay, so let's get back to TurretinFan.
To look at, but let's see if I can present it in an effective way. Let's take a peek at it. Can I do this effectively? I think I can. Yeah. So let me present this. So this is from a book by Hermann Hoskier. And this, what he has done is gone through as much as he could find of the evidence supporting the readings of the Textus Receptus, but also just more broadly looking at textual variants in those texts. And you'll see that here he has the Textus Receptus reading, this righteous, you righteous, O Lord, you are and were and shall righteous you are, O Lord, who are and who were, and the holy. He doesn't therefore have the, he has this part of the Textus Receptus reading, this Kyrie, the word Lord, but he does.
So Hoskier based his text on the 1550 of Stephanus. So obviously this emendation was done by Theodore Beza. So Theodore Beza said he had an ancient manuscript, and also he talked about the nomina sacra issue.
Here he has the majority text reading. So I'm not sure what his base text is here. Nick might know. He may have studied it more. So you can also see that there's a number of textual variants noted. There's some of them are, maybe some are more interesting than others. There is those who add holy after angel. There are those who remove the angel. There are those that add to epi after the word angel, which we saw some of, I think, in our previous review. Let's see.
So this one here, Justus S2 Eterne. So we're looking at the Arabic. So it has righteous are you, the eternal. So it doesn't have the one which art and wast and shall be. It just has the eternal. So in other words, the name of Jehovah, the name of I am, the nomina sacra name. And so that's why I bring that up. I know TurretinFan's sort of like, well, eternal, that doesn't match him with the King James. Well, it does match him with the theory that this is a sacred name, and it's one of the most sacred names in the whole New Testament. Just like I am, when we will capitalize it, we would know that Jesus is stating that he is the I am there. Here in Revelation 16:5, it has what would be considered the holiest name of God, the one which art and wast and shall be. And so that's why it's important to note things like this. It's because my understanding explains the rise of these variants. TurretinFan's understanding doesn't explain the rise of these variants. It's just like, oh, Eterne, or that's not the reading of either the critical text or the Textus Receptus, so it's not important. No, it is important when you understand it's the name of God. And so perhaps that was the Arabic way of showing that is like a nomina sacra. So like there's a whole story in that needs to be studied, thought about. People probably commentated on that. So that would be an interesting thing to look at. I wouldn't just dismiss it, wouldn't just throw it out. And so here we have like Kyrie, or when it has a minus there, a minus Kyrie. So we have plus, and so we see in 141, the Bohairic, the Ethiopic, the Complutensian, patristic writings. So yeah.
If he has the
and so here we have Justus S Domine et rectus qui fuisti et eris, and this is in the Ethiopic. So this is in the Ethiopic edition. So that's why I was pointing out to James White. He said in his book, The King James Only Controversy, it clearly says it's not in the Ethiopic. And so here, clearly, Hoskia, I think this is in 1929, says it's in the Ethiopic. And so that's all I showed James White. I just said it's in the Ethiopic. He was like, oh, and just went off about this. And it's like, well, just because I showed you a mistake in your book doesn't mean you should behave like a 4-year-old having a tantrum. But clearly, this is Hoskia's work, and he's saying et eris. So basically, when you see et eris in Latin, it's pretty much the same as futurus est. It just means will be or shall be. Okay. And so, here we have futurus est in Beatus. So Beatus of Libana, and as I pointed out in my book, it's not only in Beatus in his commentary, which goes back to 360 AD. Okay, so this is about the year 800, and so his commentary is from 360 AD, and he is in his Latin Vulgate, in the main text, he has the same reading of shall be. Okay, so that's important, and this et futurus est is exactly what we're just looking at with Wordsworth. So this is why I'm like, well, that's interesting. It's got the same words. So TurretinFan's like, just dismiss it. Just constantly just hit that snooze button. But it's like, well, I mean, even Hoskia was interested. Like, so the thing is, if I had written this, it just seems like TurretinFan would be going, why has he written this here? Why has he got righteous who? That doesn't go for his case. And it's like, well, it's just information. I've put in way more information than I probably should have. But I'm counting on people to be, thinking for themselves and going through and connecting the dots. I've left the breadcrumbs, and even when I'm talking about when Wordsworth is speaking about et futurus est, that I'm saying it's related to Beatus of Libana, and clearly here et futurus est is related to Beatus of Libana in the main text and in the commentary. So I think it's important that that's mentioned by Wordsworth, that another place where there is the triadic declaration, he said, well, sometimes Revelation 1:4 can be translated as what's equivalent to esomenos, or equivalent to the King James shall be. I think that's important. And so I know that, TurretinFan, he's just sort of like, it's just all over the place. I wouldn't see that. Well, I can clearly see that it is an important thing to bring up, and probably more study needs to be done on that and thought about, because most of the areas that I did a lot of work in was the Ethiopic, Beatus of Libana, Hamo Halberstadensis, and then I just kept getting so many people like sending me allusions and sending me quotations and things like that in the end I was just like, well, I'll put them all in the book, and I'll just say, look, some of them are absolutely relative to Revelation 16:5. Some of them are allusions to Jehovah, to I am, but I think we need to look at all this evidence. This is all stuff that we need to be really thinking about, considering James White had no idea that this was part of the Tetragrammaton, that he has no idea that this is part of a sacred name, that with its a huge long name with its own one Strong's number. The one which art and wast and shall be is just under one Strong's number. The whole entire noun phrase.
He has this Ethiopic, which we'll come to later, but this one you see it says, just you are, O Lord, and righteous, which...
and notice it's got the Lord. That's in the Ethiopic as well, Domine. So this was basically said to not be in the text by Stephen Boyce in our debate. and later on I did the homework and went, it's in there, Stephen. Why are you stalking me? Why? And it's like, oh, okay, whatever.
which was and will be. Then
anyway.
We also have this this was the Beatus of Libana and Primasius that were mentioned earlier. And you can see the subtraction of chi before. This is it's so painful for me. Those that subtract chi and the article before Hosius, these are all the witnesses that do that. These are all the witnesses that subtract the chi, but keep Theo Hosius. That's all of these. And then those that don't even have the Hosius, he identifies the Baharic. And it looks like 123 as an example of that, and also the Ethiopic. But it does have rectus instead of sanctus in the Ethiopic. Now, I don't know if he's saying that that's also the case in the Baharic and 123. I'm not sure. I think he just means in the Ethiopic. And you can see that up here. So, in fact, it does have sanctus. It's just translated differently in the Ethiopic. There's also those that don't have the article before Hosius. I don't see where he has the Kurios variant. Maybe I just passed it. Maybe he doesn't address it. I don't know. Most don't have that, so I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't mentioned it. Yeah, he doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm overlooking something, but he doesn't seem to get into it. Anyway, just some interesting.
He does like with the Domine here. Anyway.
Some interesting details. In a future episode, I may get more into some of those. We'll see about that. Huskier is interested because
and I think that's very interesting too. Like I enjoy reading through Hoskier's material. I would actually love to, if I had the time, it would be great to go through and just read through all of Hoskier's material, and from cover to cover, because in his introductions, and he talks a lot about the Textus Receptus. Now, he had a different view of the TR. Most of the guys of that era were actually supporting the traditional text, which is basically the puppy feet of the majority text movement. So Dean John William Burgon, Hoskier, Miller, these guys were actually promoting something other than the Textus Receptus. And so they had enough bullets to destroy Westcott and Hort. And a lot of the time, just like James Snap Jr., like he is defending a lot of TR readings a lot of the time, but then he turns around and he becomes our enemy at 1 John 5:7 and a few other places. And so so let's go through this. I might fast forward some of this. It's just
so much time looking at all of the witnesses that he could find. So he really did put in a lot of work, and not just on Revelation 16:5, but in other parts as well. The whole book of Revelation. Let's see. Well, like I said, I think that's about it for today. I've gone for about an hour. Maybe I'll do another episode of something entirely different. But for this particular topic, I think I've worn out my voice enough today discussing this particular topic. So thank you. Oh, hold on a second. Do all Bible versions recognize this? The short answer is no. Any Bible version that's based on the Septuagint for the Old Testament isn't directly recognizing the Masoretic text. Likewise, those that are based on Latin, like the translations from the Vulgate, don't recognize the Masoretic text of the Old Testament. And of course, there isn't the Masoretic text of the Deuterocanonical books. The Masoretes didn't preserve those because they're not part of the canon. So some Bible versions, that even the King James Version, where it has the Deuterocanonical works, it's not translating them from a Masoretic text. It's translating them from the Greek Septuagint text. Let's try to think. There are also some other versions that are out there that may translate from yet other sources. Like might be able to find an English translation of the Samaritan Pentateuch. You might be able to find an English translation of some secondary language translation. So maybe like in the same way that some people want to have an English translation of the Peshitta or Peshitta, I don't know the right pronunciation, but an Aramaic New Testament translated from the Greek to Aramaic and then translated to English. There may be some who want to do that with the Old Testament as well. And there may be some people who would want to do the same with, like, say, a Coptic or Ethiopic text translated into English, even though it originally came from another language. But the primary source for, let's say, the major English translations, the primary source will be the Hebrew, but many of the new translations are also reliant on Greek, and in some cases modify the Hebrew based on the Greek. So they're not exclusively Masoretic in all cases. All right, well, thank you, Paul Anker, Patrick Brennan, Sam RN. Thank you all for joining me and listening to me respond to Nick Sayers. God willing, our next episode of this series, which will be part 13, God willing, that will be dealing with Clement of Alexandria and perhaps more, beginning at page 125 of the book. So we have coming up Clement of Alexandria, Gregory of Nyssa, Priscillian of Avila, Basil of Caesarea, Epiphanius of Salamis, Gregory of Nazianzus, Alcuin of York, Beatus of Libana, who has a really cool illustration of that shows up in Nick's book, but also Desiderius Erasmus and Miles Coverdale, and the Ethiopic, which we mentioned a couple of times. So, well, God be with you until we meet again on here. Let's see if I can find the outro.
Okay, so at the end of the day, the claims of TurretinFan were those two things that I showed, P47 and the quotation of Wordsworth. I think they were very relevant to what we're talking about. We're talking about Revelation 16:5. We're talking about the shall be. We're talking about the triadic declarations. And so these are very, very relevant. And as we can see, like even KJV today on Revelation 11:17 says the conjunction Kai is very relevant to the inclusion in the Textus Receptus of Kai Homenos there. And so a lot of people have looked into this. And so say even the 1904 Greek patriarchal, I don't know why I've just said that wrong so many times today, text, they go with that reading of the Textus Receptus. And so patriarchal, it's getting worse. Anyway, so I'm going to go to the next video of TurretinFan. So this is part 12. So let's minimize this. Let's go to TurretinFan's thing, his live videos. So he's just done part 14. Okay. So we want to go to part 13, which I've already looked at.
Greetings, everyone. As the episode title suggests, we're on our 13th part of a response, and not exactly a book review, but a response to the book by Nick Sayers called Revelation 16:5, Beza's expansion of the rare nomen sacrum form of Jehovah and I am in the final triadic declaration. That's his title. We are now turning to chapter 3, and specifically sections 3.4 to 3.7. Chapter 3 is on the external evidence and pre-Beza illusions, and is inspired, I think, by essentially by the strong terms in which my friend James White has responded to the King James Version's reading here. And I think Nick does not believe that that's fully justified, to put it mildly. And he has presented a number of pieces of evidence. We have previously discussed the earlier sections. Section 3.1 is called External Evidence and Pre-Beza Illusions. It's kind of the introduction section. Then there's 3.2, which is P47, which we've looked at. And then 3.3 is some reference to Jerome. Now we turn to 3.4, which is Clement of Alexandria. Now there's an interesting challenge of how to present this information. Maybe the way I'll do it will be by sharing my screen. It's not usually my favorite way of doing it, but it might be the best way to do it in this instance. So it's a little bit rough notes here, but it is what it is. I don't mind sharing it with you all. I hope that it's a blessing to you. In any event, let's see if I can share my screen, and we'll get started shortly. So let's see if this works. Not too bad. I think I can do better. There we go. All right, so section 3.4 is Clement of Alexandria. And Nick writes, Clement of Alexandria, 150 to 215, while writing about the Tetragrammaton, referred to God as O Esomenos in the Stromata Book 5, 6, and then he provides a Greek transcription, and then he says that's translated as, further, the mystic name of 4 letters, which was affixed to those alone to whom the aditum was accessible, is called Jave, which is interpreted who is and shall be. I say Jave because that's how it's written in this translation. The translation does seem to be the same translation that you'll see here, although I've provided a little bit more of the text. That's the translation that's found in Schaff's translation. I don't remember who's the specific translator of this section, Robertson or somebody else. But in any event, that's, it's a standard translation. Nothing wrong with the translation. Jave here, I'm not sure whether that's the best transliteration. There is something a little bit askew with Nick's Greek.
Okay, so just looking at what he's written here, explaining the name Yahweh transliterated incorrectly in Nick's copy. The relevant text says, and it has Jave. I guess he's saying that I've got an O here. Okay, so that's his main thing. Okay, well maybe it's a typo. I don't know. Well, let's have a look. But what I'll do is I'll grab this and I'll search for it. Just have a quick Google search. And okay, so he has Java. Do I have Java? Yeah, I've got Java there. What's TurretinFan's saying? No, I've got Java there. Anyway, I thought that was the issue. It's not. Hang on.
Here, Nick's Greek has the same text as the KJV Today website has, and it has this, instead of iota, alpha, omicron, upsilon, epsilon, it omits the epsilon and just kind of ends on the upsilon. And
okay, I can see that. So what we've got there is I've probably copied this from the KJVtoday.net website. And so, every time I've contacted the author of the KJVtoday.net, and we used to do a few articles together, and he wants to remain anonymous. I've said, oh, can I copy this material? And he's just like, just do whatever you want with what I've got on the website. So I've actually copied most of the relevant stuff over onto the Textus Receptus website that I've got, because it's such good material. Like even recently when I was talking about the 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 about the falling away, he'd already written an article on that like years ago, and I hadn't read it. And so I was going through and I read his stuff and went, he's saying that this is the rapture. I was like, we're on the same page. This is amazing. Because it was funny because like other guys like First and Tommy McMurtry were recommending, like even First recommends his website on his own homepage. And I was thinking, does he realize that he's actually sort of got a whole pre-trib thing in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3, but and he offers a really good scholarly argumentation for it. And so so perhaps what I've done here is in the Greek it's missing an E, but let's just, what I'll do, I'll just search for that, because sometimes things like this can just be simply just a typo, or sometimes it can just be a different. Yeah, so KJV Today. Yeah, so I think what I've done, I've copied it from KJV Today because that's the first one on the list. Then we see academic dictionaries and encyclopedias. Okay, well, these guys have a tetragrammaton on my website. So it's interesting. I with an error like that, you can see who's copied your material. But no, we do see it here. That, yeah, this one here where it has the Esomenos, Clement of Alexandria, it's clearly, oops, a bit too far there. Yeah, here we are. It has iota, alpha, omicron, upsilon, and it doesn't have the epsilon on the end of it there. So this is clearly the Esomenos here that it's talking about. Esomenos. So this I guess charge from TurretinFan, it's unwarranted. So I guess the Greek that he's found has this reading. these other ones, I mean, that's pretty old. That's like 18 something. Yeah, 1865. So it looks, yeah, it's in that one as well. 1855, 55. So it looks like it's in quite a lot of older style books. And I should really go through all these because there's so much information being put on the internet that in 2019, when I wrote my book, I mean, I could have put so much more, but I had to actually stop amending the book because it gets to the point where you can't amend the book anymore because they're going to publish it. And so, but yeah, I should really go through. And even on my own website, I've got so much more information now that I could add in the book. But yeah, clearly here, I don't think that TurretinFan is his concerns. Yeah, so it says Nick's Greek seems to be taken from, or at least the same as KJV today, which has that reading. Bottom line, though, is that it does not mention or refer to Revelation 16:5, thus it's not a good witness. So I guess he's sort of pointing out an error, which isn't an error, but then he's saying it's not doesn't refer to Revelation 16:5, which if you were watching earlier, I clearly say that at the beginning of this section, it must be acknowledged that some of the quotations allude directly to Revelation 16:5, others to I am and Jehovah, and some to both. Due to the related nature of these instances, all are considered significant in this examination. So I've got all the evidence there that I could find. It doesn't mean that I'm saying, hey, this one is exactly Revelation 16:5. What I'm saying is it reads the same as Revelation 16:5, but it's probably just the explanation of the name of Jehovah. But that's part of our case as well. And so, you know what I'm saying? And so I just mentioned that just in case anyone else has just dropped in. And so, yeah, we'll continue on with TurretinFan.
I have no idea why there's this discrepancy, but I'm pretty sure that the correct Greek is like this. With the reason for these over lines is just to separate out the letters, but show it's still one word, but they're just spaced apart. And I would tend to think that this looks like Yahovah. I don't know if that's the reason. I mean, Yahweh, Yahovah, Yahweh. I don't know. It's hard to say. The vowel sound transliteration isn't perfect, but it looks a lot like Yahweh or Yahweh. And
because that's interesting, because the one that I've got there is, it's like, and I've often said that this is one of the main reasons why they pronounce it as Yahweh, because they say, okay, because it's saying basically the Hebrews pronounce it this way, okay, in the Greek. But then you've got to go, okay, how were the Greeks pronouncing this? Because we string things together differently than what the Greeks would. And so is it like each letter is completely like a separate sound? Is it E, A, O, E? Yeah, you know, like E, A, O, V. Or is it like TurretinFan saying here, E, A, O, U, E, E, O, V? You know, like, I don't know. And so the thing is, you can't just go, well, that's how the Greeks sounded it. We're going to call him Yahweh, which is the exact pronunciation of Jupiter. Yahweh Pitta is the name of Jupiter. So it's quite amazing that people in churches are chanting and yelling out and screaming and praying to Jupiter. It just amazes me that people still default to having that name, you know.
Less like Jehovah. Not that that really matters. It's not the main point here. The main point here is, although you do see this, which is Ho'on, who is, and you see and Kai, Hoasomenos, and who shall be. So you see this expression, the one who is and shall be. You see that, and you know, if this were, let's say, this were somebody's text of Revelation 16, this would be closer to the King James Version than some copies that we have today. But this particular text isn't a translation of Revelation 16:5 or a comment on Revelation 16:5, or really anything to do with Revelation 16:5. It's just giving a meaning for the name of Jehovah or Yahweh,
which I mentioned earlier in my book, which seems to be overlooked in every one of these examples, but that's fine. Hopefully TurretinFan will watch this and keep that in mind when he's going through these examples.
The Tetragrammaton, that's what this is referring to. And you'll notice, interestingly, the author, which is Clement of Alexandria, he says the name of God too, among the Greeks, contains 4 letters, which is Theos. That's the name that he has in mind for the 4-letter name of God.
I'm not sure about that. The name of God too. Okay. Elenus Theos. Hutwanoma. I think it's actually just talking about the way that the Greeks are pronouncing the name. Because Yahweh would be like 2 syllables, Jehovah, 3 syllables. But they're saying it contains 4 letters. Okay, interesting anyway.
Theos, so theta, epsilon, omicron, sigma, theos is that name. Deus in Latin also happens to work out as 4 letters. English doesn't have that exact, the word God in English is just 3 letters. But the bottom line is, as far as being a witness to Revelation 16:5, this isn't a witness to Revelation 16:5. It is an interesting point in terms of being a patristic expression of the understanding of the meaning of the name Jehovah in the time of Clement of Alexandria, but it doesn't really have anything to do with Revelation 16:5, and there's no reason to think.
Again, at each one of these points, I'm just going to have to say, well, I did say some are relative, some are to do with Jehovah. Obviously, this one's to do with Jehovah. It's explaining. But I'll read through my book, and you'll see the relevance that TurretinFan doesn't seem to be looking at. He's going through my book, but he's not clearly saying what I'm saying about it. Well, I guess perhaps he is, but he's not really focusing on the certain points that I want him to focus on.
I think that this has anything to do with Revelation 16:5 based on the wording, or more importantly, based on the context. This is talking about a description of the temple and the fact that.
Oh yeah, by the way, I'm not sure if TurretinFan will watch this or see this, but TurretinFan said in one of his videos that he sent me an email about something about being involved with the Roman Catholic expose on a video. I didn't receive any email. So sometimes there are emails that are very close. Like I know, like Textus Receptus Bibles, there is Textus Receptus Bible, and so it could have gone to Keith Mason, for example. But yeah, I would just be perhaps just send it to this address, ausclix@gmail. Oops. Yeah, just that one, ausclix@gmail.com, and that will get me. But I'll probably, I'm only just doing this because I just remembered it then, but I've just been a bit busy, and so, but in the next few days, I guess I'll send you a message so I can find out what you're thinking about with that Roman Catholic material.
The 4 pillars are here with the mystic name of 4 letters, meaning the Tetragrammaton. They're on the 4 pillars. So no, it's not a good example of evidence. Although there's similarity in terms of the Greek words that are used, and Nick provides I'm not going to make my camera bigger for that, but Nick points out that this differs from the text of Revelation 16:5 in Beza by the fact that it omits who was, but it's not intended to be a quotation from Revelation 16:5 as far as we can tell. So it says here, the Greek church writers used the future participle of eimi to refer to the same Jehovah mentioned in Revelation 16:5. Now, even if that's true, that's not really indicative of anything to do with the actual original text.
But it is, because you've got Greeks saying, okay, the name of Jehovah is Kaiho Esomenos, exactly what Theodore Beza is saying. So all I'm doing is I'm building a case for why, Beza explained why he did what he did. These early church writers are saying, well, the name of Jehovah means this, exactly what Theodore Beza had. And so the thing is, it's not just, this is the only information Beza had. He had an ancient manuscript with this reading in it. And that's caused him to go with that, to amend his text according to this ancient manuscript. Then he's pointing out that it's nomina sacra. Okay. And then we're just reading through people saying, yeah, this is the name of Jehovah. And it just so happens to be exactly the third part, or here it's like I think it's the second and third part of the Triadic Declaration in Revelation 16:5. So I think it's very relevant.
Of Revelation 16:5. And then Clement said the interpretation of Jehovah has who is and shall be. And then Nick says, was he speaking about how it is interpreted by the apostle in the New Testament at Revelation 16:5? But again, Revelation 16:5, why is he saying that that's an apostolic interpretation there? The text says that he heard the angel of the waters say this. So this would be not an apostolic interpretation. This would be what the angel said, and John just recorded what the angel said. So no, not sure that he should go down that path. And then Nick says, White will no doubt claim it is not related, as he has already done here. And I agree. I mean, I agree probably that Dr. White would say that, and Dr. White would be right. And then he says, if he knows he's cornered, he will simply avoid the topic whatsoever. Well, I mean, it's not a matter of avoiding the topic here. The issue is actually it's just not particularly relevant patristic citation.
No, it is avoiding the topic. Like when I give him a book in his hand, he refuses to take it and then says he will never, ever read that book with this information in it. He's avoiding the topic. Tell me how I should explain it then. If you think that's being nasty, tell me, how do I explain that? Okay, well, James White is being cautious or being funny, or how else am I going to explain it? That he announced, I will never read that book. I will never read it. And it's like, okay, well, you're avoiding the topic. And you start talking about these things, he's just like, no, and he just keeps throwing up dust. So I'll go through what I've said about it in my book in a minute, but we'll just let TurretinFan go to the point where he's exhausted this, and then I'll go through
it. He asks us to look at what White says in his book, and he provides a quotation about there isn't the slightest doubt as to what John wrote here, and that King James Version onlyism is an unfounded tradition that flies in the face of the truth. But what Dr. White has to say on this point, while valued to me as his friend, just isn't really persuasive evidence one way or another on Revelation 16:5. As far as the final point in this section, Nick argues, Clement related kai ho hesomenos shall be to Jehovah. I mean, should I say case closed right there? Well, you shouldn't say that, Nick. If what you were trying to set out to prove was that shall be is related to Jehovah in terms of the meaning, then you would have given an example of someone who agreed with you on that point. That's not enough to close the case, but it would be an example of someone who supports your point, that the name Jehovah means who is and shall be.
And that's what James White was saying. It doesn't equal that. That's the problem. Is initially he was saying that's not the meaning, that's not true. But then after he's gone like full circle and he's sort of alluding to it a little bit. He said he doesn't understand it whatsoever, because I was like, oh, this is the expansion of the name of Jehovah. And he said, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. It's don't follow this guy. And so he doesn't understand the link to the Triadic Declaration to Jehovah. He has no idea. That's what he was saying. And so that's why I'm just like, why wouldn't he read through this material? So this is the thing. I've put myself into the shoes of James White. Okay. I thought, okay, what does James White know? What doesn't he know? I read through his book multiple times. That whole section, Revelation 16:5, read over it many, many, many times. went through everything that I could find on the internet where I was just typed in James White, Revelation 16:5. Even just James White 16:5, Dr. White 16:5, a whole bunch of different ways to search for these things. Found every video that even mentioned, even if it was just a slight little 16:5 thing, and watched every single one of them. And so I've put myself into his shoes, gotten his mindset, and I'm like, he hardly knows anything about this. He doesn't even know it's related to Jehovah. He was saying it's stupid. So that's why it's not just, this is a defense of, which art and was shall be. Yes, it's that. But it's also showing that Jehovah does mean which art and was and shall be. So this is the thing. This was what was denied. And so, again, I would just say that TurretinFan doesn't really know the historical context. I was there. I was at the brunt of James White's, sometimes hour long talking about me, talking about how silly and ridiculous these concepts are and all the rest of it. And I'm like, well, I'm just saying what church writers are saying this. They're using the word asomenos, asomenos, the exact reading of Theodore Beza, for the name of Jehovah. So I'm not sure what can't you see that? And no, and just throwing dust in the air. And so, but I guess I can't expect TurretinFan to come along and understand what's happened, and why I don't really like James White much, because I guess it's like trying to explain the Trump era or something like that, or the Biden era or something. It's like you have to sort of follow it all the way along to see the strange and weird things that have been happening, and to get to the point where you got like the capital issue where it's supposed to be the biggest insurrection ever, and it's like, but how do you explain to someone how things built up? That you have to go back. You have to go back and look at these things historically. And I know that I wouldn't be bothered. You know what I mean? But to me, James White knew this. Jeff Riddle knew this. Robert Truelove knew this. Pretty much everyone who's a TR person was sort of, vaguely sort of following this. Even a lot of confessional bibliology guys are sort of, tinkering with, watching me and looking through all these things. And it's like, because I was constantly mentioned on the dividing line as the TR guy, they were like, "Who's this TR guy?" "Oh, it's this guy, Revelation 16:5." "Okay," and they go through it, so they know all this. So if you don't know it, and I can tell you don't know it, and so I'm just saying, it's great to defend James and to have a commentary on it, but it's you don't know the historical context of a lot of what's being said here. And as I mentioned, some are alluding to Revelation 16:5, some to I am and Jehovah, and others to both. So there's three classes there. So what does this relate to? This relates to Jehovah, and it also relates to the name of Jehovah being the exact representation that Beza has, that he said he found in an ancient manuscript. This just so happens to match up with Beatus of Libanus reading, and just so happens to be the exact reading of the Ethiopic as well. And so that's the thing. When I'm saying, okay, it's related to the name of Jehovah, exactly. that's the point. So it's not related to Revelation 16:5, but I'm sort of stopping nearly at each point to say this, and that's just because I guess TurretinFan has overlooked that little footnote that I put there. And as I said, I probably should have put it in the main text.
And then he says, this is the exact reading of Beza, but there's more to come. But this is an oversell. This is not accurate. Even as Nick himself showed on the previous page, this doesn't have who is and was and shall be, and this doesn't weigh in one way or another on whether to omit O Holy One. And the reason it doesn't weigh in on whether to omit a Holy One is because it's not a reference to Revelation 16:5. It's simply a statement about the meaning of the Tetragrammaton, according to Clement of Alexandria. So,
And so you can see why I'm sort of getting a bit annoyed, because I have put those three categories there: Revelation 16:5 illusions, Jehovah illusions, and I am illusions, or relating to both of those in a sense where I'm coupling I am and Jehovah illusions together. And so those three distinct things. And so when he's seeing something that is not distinctly Revelation 16:5, he's just like losing it each time. And it's sort of like, I'm just putting that information there. It shouldn't be considered that controversial. I'm placing everything there, even if it doesn't make me look good. It's just like, well, that's what they said. I have no choice about what these guys said. Now, if they've used the exact words that appear in Theodore Beza's text and in the Textus Receptus, it's like, well, okay, well, he's using these words for the Tetragrammaton, which is pretty much the case that I've made in the last 100 pages of the book. So it is important. And yeah.
If he's right about the meaning, then the who was shouldn't be there. It should be a.
So you notice now it's like, well, it should have all the elements. It should match up. It should have the entire Triad Declaration, which art and was and shall be. It should have, next it'll probably be like, oh, it should have Lord there, or you should have this other thing there. And I didn't write that. I've just gone, okay, Clement of Alexandria, he's said kai ho esomenos, which means and shall be, which is exactly the King James reading, exactly the Textus Receptus reading. Whether he's saying it for Revelation 16:5, I'm not saying whether he is, whether he isn't, but it just so happens to be the exact reading. Okay. Which is important. And he's saying that it's related to the name of Jehovah. So all the way through, when I'm saying, if you expand the name of Jehovah, it means this, well, he's an early church writer just saying the basically what I'm saying. Now, is he leaving certain elements out that make it related to Revelation 16:5? Yes. But at the end of the day, you can see similarities.
Dyadic declaration of who is and shall be. If Clement of Alexandria is right on this point, it's not case closed in that case. It's just a new revision is needed. But I don't think any new revision is needed based on that. Just pointing out that this saying that this is case closed is an oversell. What is the most? I want to put this in the best possible way. The kindest way I could put this is within the cumulative case that Nick has been building. Within this cumulative case where he starts off with the idea that the name Jehovah means who was and is and shall be, that within that case, Clement provides some evidence supportive of Nick's case.
Exactly. That's my point. The name of Jehovah, if you expand it, it's Revelation 16:5. Okay.
In other words, I don't think if we're evaluating Nick's overall argument.
So, in other words, TurretinFan has overlooked my footnote. I've put in way too much information here where I could have just left these out. Or maybe what I should do in another edition of the book is have another heading over the top of these and say, this is an allusion to the Tetragrammaton, but we can see, relative words that are used in Revelation 16:5 that match the Tetragrammaton here. But surely you can just see this yourself. Do I have to spoon feed each one of these readings? Surely you can read through this and go, oh, okay, there's the name of Jehovah. Okay, that's interesting. He's talking about the one who is and shall be. That's interesting. Yeah, it has the exact reading that Theodore Beza used. Yeah, I can see why Nick put that there. That's he's probably not quoting Revelation 16:5, but it just so happens to be the same reading because it's the name of Jehovah. Oh, that builds on Nick's case, But he's like, Revelation 16:5 has to be exact reading. Yeah, we'll get to those. But it's like, well, just because I put in these other places, like, sure. And as I read through my book, you'll see more information and the context of why I've talked about this particular issue or this particular quotation. And so,
and if we were not persuaded about the meaning of Jehovah, that has to do with God's self-existence, and if we said to ourselves, no, it doesn't include the future, as I think some commentators have said something to that effect, but if we...
Who?
Then you could bring out Clement of Alexandria and say, well, Clement of Alexandria disagrees with you. So whatever weight of authority you put on Clement of Alexandria, that weight of authority is now standing against you if you say that the name Jehovah doesn't include the future. It doesn't include a meaning of the one who is and shall be.
Well, it's got to be taken into consideration what this meant back to Clement of Alexandria, because we've seen several times that, say, in the Ethiopic, which is a Semitic language, it used to read from right to left up until about the year 400. And they have, in some of their words, the meaning of the past and the present, but it's only in one word. And so we can't fathom that. We need a separate word in English. But, and so I'm not sure whether him just talking about this present and future, whether he's maybe there's a bit that I've missed and he's already talked about the past here or something like that, or maybe in context he just wants to talk about only those two aspects. You know, for TurretinFan to sort of say, okay, well, this goes against our case because it doesn't have this other reading. It's like, well, okay, firstly, we got to read all this in context. We got to think about this. We got to, go through it and, make sure that, does he mention some of those things or doesn't he mention some of those things? We've just got to go through it. And so, they're things that need to be taken into consideration. But the main thing, and when I was writing this book, the main theme was the shall be reading. That was the main thing I was focusing on. The whole concept of who is and who was, it was like, okay, well, that's fine. Sometimes it's only got who was, sometimes it's got who is, sometimes it's got eternal, sometimes it's got other things. And it's like, well, I was mostly focusing on shall be, because James White said the shall be reading has never been seen before Theodore Beza. So clearly I'm showing, okay, well, shall be here, the exact reading of Somenos, as the Textus Receptus has it, is the meaning of Jehovah, according to Clement of Alexandria. So Clement of Alexandria might have been wrong, he might have made mistakes here. So the thing is, I didn't write this. He did. And so anyway.
So no need to make Clement of Alexandria the final authority or an uncorrectable source or anything like that. Oh, I see it's got some new, I got a comment here about a debate. Well, since Marsha Brady, that name is very familiar. In any event, the short answer says, would I be willing to debate a Christian apologist named Chris Claus? He's good, but he also believes EOs and RCCs and Reformed Christians are all equal in status. I have no idea who Chris Claus is. No offense to him. I just don't, maybe I've heard of him. I just forgotten about it. It's just not top of mind right now. I don't know what he wants to debate about. But if he can behave himself and conduct a civil debate, and there's something worth debating that he's interested in debating, I'm certainly happy to talk about it. I don't know the best way for you to reach me, but if you go through my blog, it's easy to get my contact information there. TurretinFan.blogspot.com is the blog. So that's the end of section 3.4. Section 3.5 is Gregory of Nyssa.
Okay, so I'll go through my book now. Clement of Alexandria, 3.4. Clement of Alexandria, 150 to 215. Okay, while writing about the Tetragrammaton, referred to God as Somenos in the Stromata book 5, number 6. And so here it has Ho'un Kaiho Esomenos, okay? Translated as further the mystic name of 4 letters which is affixed to those alone to whom the additum was accessible is called Ja'ave, or however you pronounce Jah-A-Ve-E. I know it can be Jave or whatever, but anyway, which is interpreted who is and who shall be. Okay. With the revelation concerning the Triadic Declaration, the above reading has a remarkable resemblance with Beza's reading. And so notice that, this needs to be shown here. The 1582, 1588, 1594, 1598 reading compared with Clement's 3rd century reading is here. So we can clearly see the 1582. So we have Ha'on, then we have Kaiho'en, and then Kaiho'esomenos. Okay. So Clement's basically saying the name of Jehovah means Ha'on, Kaiho'esomenos. So you can see why I put it there. It's pretty much Beza's reading except for that part. So I think anyone seeing that would go, yes, I can understand why Nick would put that there. And it's the meaning of the name of Jehovah. And so Clement's, he's basically saying this is how it's interpreted. So when I'm like, okay, the name of Jehovah expanded, well, Clement's like the name of Jehovah interpreted. That's how you interpret it. Okay. Now, he only has the is and shall be. Does he say exactly Revelation 16:5? No, he doesn't. Did he make a mistake there? I don't know. Does he talk about it in after this? I don't know. I haven't. I probably did read through a bit of this, and because I had to, basically copy and paste that section. So I might have read stuff before and stuff after, but I can't remember. That was in 2019, and most of this this section here was 2015. So the Greek writer, and so this is in Greek as well. So it's not an issue of translation and all the rest of it. This is like, we're looking at exactly the same Greek, except for this section here. The Greek church writers use the future participle of imi to refer to the name Jehovah mentioned in Revelation 16:5. Clement said the interpretation of Jehovah has who is and shall be. Was he speaking about how it is interpreted by the apostle in the New Testament of Revelation 16:5? Now, TurretinFan had a bit of a issue with that, sort of making out that no, it was an angel speaking, and so John just wrote it down, which is true. But from scholars' perspectives, they were looking at how the one which art and was and shall be is the expansion of the name of Jehovah, and so that would have been it would have been just like I would talk about Beza. With his expansion of the name of Jehovah, it equals the one which was and is and shall be, or is and was and shall be. So John doing this as well, he has is and was and shall be. So was he speaking about that particular thing? So it's not so much just saying, oh, it should have been an angel. It's saying that this is something that the apostle wrote down. Okay. So White will no doubt claim that it's not related, as he has already done here. So he's already said that this is completely unrelated. And James White said he would never read my book. If he knows he is cornered, he will simply avoid the topic whatsoever. Look at what James White says in his book. Thankfully, there isn't the slightest doubt as to what John wrote here, and only misguided dedication to a human tradition would cause anyone to believe otherwise. Christians are people of truth, and I truly exhort any KJV-only advocate to seriously consider this text and to examine the documentation provided and to recognize King James onlyism for what it is, an unfounded tradition that flies in the face of truth. Clement related Kaiho'esomenos shall be to Jehovah, that is a whole nother thing that I've been saying all the way through, which James White has fought against. Okay. I mean, should I say case closed right there? Am I saying case closed for Revelation 16:5? clearly I'm piecing together lots of different information, and clearly I'm categorizing into 3 different groups: Revelation 16:5, I am, and Jehovah, or all 3 of them. And so this would relate to the name of Jehovah, but it also does relate to Revelation 16:5 because it's the exact same reading in the future form and in the present form. So I've written, should I say case close right there? This is the exact reading of Beza, but there's more to come. Excuse me. Sorry, it's just nearly midnight here, so I'm a little bit tired. But so when I'm saying it's the exact reading of Beza, I'm clearly in this book, I'm talking about and shall be, the future form. That's what James White was saying. It is never been seen before. And I'm like, okay, well, here it is. It's in this explaining the name of Jehovah. And it just so happens to be the name Theodore Beza used. There we go. That's most of what I'm trying to get at in my book. It's pretty, and it's only a small little statement here. It's just like, okay, there we go. And then, like, I'm talking about James White, just basically saying, you know, we just don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. But I'm only just going, okay, here's the information. There you go. Look, it lines up with Beza's here. Yes, we don't have the past participle there, but we're not really sure of the context there, so I'll have to look that up. So maybe I can actually do that. Maybe I'll just copy that. Hopefully it doesn't go somewhere crazy. Okay, here we are. So anyway, he is talking about a whole bunch of different things. So it would be hard for me just to grab onto one thing here, but it's like you've really got to read the whole thing in context to get to the conclusions that TurretinFan's saying, oh no, it only has the who is and who shall be. So it's got the present and the future. Oh, it doesn't have the past. Well, you know, I would say, okay, let's read through all this. Let's get the context of it all. Think about it. Let's just not jump to those conclusions. Now, that might be the conclusion, but I'm just saying we have to be careful of just making that type of assumption. Okay. So let's continue.
Gregory of Nyssa, 335 to 395, referred to Christ, this is what Nick says, referred to Christ as Oasomenos on the baptism of Christ. He provides a Greek transcription, and he provides the translation, which says, and verily the adorner of the bride is Christ, who is, and was, and shall be, blessed now, and forevermore. Amen. And then Nick says, Gregory of Nyssa clearly said, Jesus is who is, and was, and shall be. In the 4th century, we have a triadic declaration related to Jesus that has, and shall be. So, first things first on this, when we come to Gregory of Nyssa here, so section 3.5, Gregory of Nyssa, and we see that it says, on the baptism of Christ, it's describing Christ as the adorner of the bride. And I've just provided a bit more of the translation. I think, yeah, this is also from Schaff's set. Here's more of the translation. And I think Nick provided the standard translation. No issues there. But you'll see that the text I've put some bold and so forth in the text, and I'll get into that in a bit more as we go. It says, for all these things, then, let us sing to God that hymn of joy, which lips touched by the Spirit long ago sang loudly. Let my soul be joyful in the Lord, for he has clothed me with a garment of salvation and has put upon me a robe of gladness. As on a bridegroom, he has set a mitre upon me, and as a bride, he has adorned me with fair array. And verily, the adorner of the bride is Christ, who is and was and shall be blessed, now and forevermore. Amen. I don't know. Patrick asks about Chris Claus as somehow being connected to Santa Claus. I hope that's not what's going on. If it's just a joke, it's a joke. That's fine. I don't know. I'll just leave that as for what it is. If it's a serious request, I'm happy to take it seriously. If it's just a joke, so be it. Coming back to Gregory of Nyssa, you'll notice I've bolded who is and was and shall be, but I've only bolded who is and what and shall be. I didn't bold and was. And the reason is primarily because in terms of the Greek words, who is and shall be are here, but you'll notice there's no article before shall be, and you'll notice that the was is also not preceded by an article, and it's a different form here instead of just what was it in the, let's see if I have it handy. Yeah, instead of n or hen, it is proun. So proun. Anyway, yeah. So it has this one article followed by on kai proun kai esomenos. What is it? Eulogetos. Eulogetos is blessed. So the point is that these are connecting Christ as being the one who is, was, and shall be blessed. Not just who is, was, and shall be. But
so I'm not sure why he's saying that, because there is a comma here, who is and was and shall be. Then it has blessed now and forevermore. Amen. Like, that type of language, I'm pretty sure it's in Romans. And here, clearly, there's a comma after esomenos, and the eulogentos nun ki, is it tis, is after the comma. And so, you just got to be careful of saying, okay, who is and was and shall be blessed now and forevermore. Okay, that you got to be careful of reading that into it.
But there's an object there. He will be blessed. And that's presumably why the article is not repeated there. These aren't being used in a substantival form, I don't believe. In any event, whether or not they are, you can see that the Greek is a bit different. Even the parts that are similar is different. So the first part is the same, because it has the article. The center of this triad is a different word, a different Greek word. The third word has the esomenos, but it doesn't have an article. But the reason why neither the second term nor the third term have the article is because this is saying that Christ is, was, and will be blessed. Not
I think that's just been read into it.
Just that he is, was, and will exist.
But I'll get into that. We'll let TurretinFan say what he's got to say, and then I'll examine this. So
this seems to be a misplaced reliance, and
the thing is too, like even just if you look at my book here, notice I've got Gregory of Nyssa clearly said Jesus is who is and who was, and then I've got bolden and shall be. So a lot of these are pointing to and shall be, and this is one of the things when we're looking through manuscripts, Ethiopic and others, sometimes it says and shall be. And this was one of the things which Stephen Boyce was trying to get me to argue for. And I said, look, I've never really made that claim, because he was saying, oh, you're saying that the Ethiopic has the whole triadic declaration, blah, blah, blah. And it does. It actually does. But at the time, I was like, no, I've made the claim that it says shall be. But I actually apologized and said, well, if I've done that, then, yeah, sorry. But then after the debate, went back through all of my material, took me ages. And then I was like, I've never done that. So I contacted him and said, actually, I've never done that. And he said, no, you have. You admitted it in the debate. And it's like, oh, no. I sort of apologized if I'd done that. He said, no, you admitted it. It's like, but I'm saying now that I've gone through all my stuff and I haven't done that. No, you said. And it's like, oh, my God. And so the thing is, I'm saying very clearly that we're talking about the shall be issue, the esomenos issue, and that the word that esomenos is in many of these readings. I'm oftentimes, and this is what I'm dealing with the most. People go, "Oh, what about the Lord issue?" And as I mentioned in the book, it's like, well, yeah, we could go through all that, but it's a whole different issue. Oh, what about the one who was and is issue? And it's like, well, yeah, I do bring this up because most of the time it's there. But if it's not there, it's like, I'm talking about the shall be issue, because that's the one that James White said it doesn't read and shall be. I'm like, okay, well, let's look for and shall be everywhere. And then I'm finding who was and is and shall be. And that's what I'm focusing on. And shall be, and shall be. And so clearly, when I'm quoting James White in his book, he's saying that and shall be reading is just made up in the mind of Theodore Beza. I'm like, no, here someone else is saying and shall be. They're clearly quoting this, quoting that. And so, I guess, so a lot of these issues are actually like, say, TurretinFan's saying, well, that's not a good example because you don't have Lord there. It's like, well, okay, well, that's your opinion. I'm focused on the shall be issue. And it's like, well, that's not a good example because you have, who is and shall be, but you don't have who was. So, okay, well, I'm focusing on the shall be issue. And so the thing is, by now it should be relevant. And look, I'm boldening and shall be. And so it's, it's pretty clear what I'm focusing on here, And, let me go back through James White's material, or should I really go back through it? He basically just says, let me just read it straight from his book. Okay, so it says, John did not write and shall be. He wrote, O Holy One. Okay. That's why I'm focusing on shall be. Because James White in his book said John did not write and shall be. Regardless of whether it says Lord, regardless of whether it says who is and who was, blah, blah, I'm focusing on those issues. And so it's pretty clear what I'm saying, and I've underlined a lot of the times when James White's quoting things from the book, and I'm like, okay, well, we're focusing in on that, on the shall be issue. Even with Miles Coverdale, I've gone through the whole thing of the I am. He translated I shall be who I shall be, and talked about shall be and how it was, in the Geneva Bible as one word, shall be, and that type of thing. And so it's a lot of focus on shall be, which is equivalent to esomenos. So that's what I'm focusing on. So if I show something that has shall be in it, and you're like, well, it doesn't have Lord in it. It's like, okay. Okay, well, just throw it in the bin then, I guess. You know what I mean? Or it doesn't have, it has who is and shall be, but it doesn't have who was. In the bin again. It's like, I'm just showing you the evidence that I've got here. There are other places where it does just have the reading, one which was and is to come. Theodore Beza had that reading in a manuscript. And so it's like, anyway, I guess it just becomes a little bit annoying when it's always focused on what you have not said. But then if I go too far and say a whole bunch of other stuff, it's like that just gets focused on, Anyway, let's continue. I'm still glad that he's going through all this stuff, but I can just get a little bit annoyed that things aren't focused. And if it's not the exact Greek, well, it can't be and was, even though that's a translation here of Philip Schaff, which is one of the main guys for the Revised Version with Westcott and Horde. So anyway, let's continue.
Seems to be essentially a doxology, and it's probably drawn from and expanding on 2 Corinthians 11:31, which says the one who's blessed to the ages. And you can see how blessed to the ages becomes who is and was and shall be blessed to the ages of ages. So you see this ice, the ionos, the ionion, or ionon. But it means to the ages of ages, and then amen added on the end. So it's just a doxological expansion here, probably building on the doxology from 2 Corinthians 11:31, and it doesn't provide a witness to Revelation 16:5 one way or another. I suppose if someone was going to say that if someone was opposing Nick's view on the ground, on a theological ground, that Christ will not continue to exist in the future, and therefore he shouldn't be called the one who shall be, then this would be rebuttal of that point. But the value of him, discerner, I will just want to pose to your comment for Marcia. Yeah, if you reach out to, if you tell Chris Knust to get in contact with Donnie from Standing for Truth, and I think you can get that through his YouTube channel, Standing for Truth. If you reach out to him there, he is willing to set up debates, and he's great at doing it. He's a great moderator. I really appreciate all his efforts. So, coming back to, coming back to Gregory of Nyssa, the problem I see here is, again, this isn't an example of somebody using Revelation 16:5. Let's say Gregory of Nyssa has his own copy of Revelation 16:5, and he's quoting from it, and it has and shall be. Instead, what it has is who is and was and shall be blessed, which is a different use. This isn't.
Even the English doesn't say that. It says, and verily, the adorner of the bride of Christ, who is, comma, and was, comma, and shall be, comma, blessed now and forevermore. Amen. It doesn't say, and verily, the adorner of the bride is Christ, who is, and was, and shall be blessed, comma, now and forevermore. You know what I mean? He's just reading into that.
That noun phrase that Nick likes to talk about. The verbs here are not being used as nouns, they're being used as verbs. It is affirming Christ's pre-existence, continued existence, and enduring existence, but it does not provide a witness of the Beza reading at Revelation 16:5. I see. Patrick, I wonder if you're thinking of, well, I'm just going to leave that off for now. I'm getting distracted. Let me focus on Nick's point here. All right. So Nick concludes that section with this statement. He says, so White, although he has been shown several of these examples before, has simply shrugged them off and claimed the reading has no evidence, and those who think so are deceived. I can't say whether someone's deceived or not, but I can tell you that this isn't evidence of Revelation 16:5 having a different reading. There's no reason to think from this that Gregory of Nyssa had a copy of Revelation and that his copy of Revelation had and shall be there. He's not quoting Revelation 16:5 here. He's saying who is and was and shall be blessed. That's what he's saying.
I think you're adding to that. That's got a comma there. Who is and was and shall be blessed now and forevermore. I mean, that's Scharf. Scharf is like, he's a liberal scholar, but he knows what he's doing.
And therefore, it's not a quotation from Revelation 16:5. Not only is the middle verb different, but it's not. These aren't being used as nouns. So I'm not sure what else to add here. This is just wrong. I mean, as an evidence of Revelation 16:5, it's wrong. Its value in the overall cumulative case is pretty low. It would really only be useful against someone who says it's improper to say that Christ shall be. And then you'd say, well, aha, what do you know? Listen to Gregory of Nyssa. He says Christ shall be blessed. And if
not Christ shall be blessed, well, it's not saying that.
Christ shall be blessed, then that means that
it says who is and was and shall be blessed now and forevermore.
Christ shall be, because you can't be blessed if you're not being. But in any event,
it's a notice even. It's who is the present, who was the past, and shall be the future. It's in the English translation of Scharf, it's the exact reading. The one who is and was and shall be.
Let's continue on. So 3.6.
Okay, so let's go through. I'm probably going to stop at the end of this one. So Gregory of Nyssa, 335 to 395, referred to Christ as ho'osomenos on the baptism of the Christ. And so here we have ho'on kai proun kai esomenos, translated as, and verily the adorner of the bride is Christ, who is and was and shall be, blessed now and forevermore. Amen. So let me just get the King James Version, KJV, 1611, Revelation 16. Okay, he's saying that there's just absolutely no way. This is just so little importance. Why is Nick even showing this? This is silly. Okay, so let's look at. Okay, so that's not the 1611 there. Revelation 16:5. Let's go there. Open it up. Look at the lovely picture here. Make it double the size. And here we go. Chapter 16. Here we are. All right. So let's put these side by side and let's just see if this reading is just, and you got to remember this is Philip Schaff who's promoting Westcott Hort's text. Okay, so here we have 5 here. And I heard the angel of the waters say, Thou art righteous, O Lord, which art and wast and shall be. So a modernization of that would be, which this would be an exact modernization, which is, which art and was and wast and shall be. It's the exact reading of Revelation 16:5 when it's translated by Philip Schaff. So why would you think that it's unimportant? Why would you think that it's not? It's the exact reading of the King James Version. The exact reading of the King James Version when translated. And so can you see why I'm a little bit frustrated with TurretinFan? He's just like, when you listen to him, he's like, well, I've got all the reasons in the world to justify dismissing this because it says who is and was and shall be blessed. That doesn't seem like how it's being translated here. I think you're adding to that. So anyway, I think you can clearly see it. So that's the original 1611. This reads like if he was translating this into, in the era of 1611, and that would be an interesting thing to do. Maybe I can grab Gregory of Nyssa here, and I'll see if I can. Well, maybe I can grab the whole thing. I'll open up a new page. We'll go to translate. I'll just see how it translates. That'll be interesting. Have a Christ as the guardian of the bride, who was and is and who is. So obviously there's the future form of Somenos is not translated properly there. Comma, blessed now and forever. Amen. So it's not who was and is and who is to come or who shall be blessed. It's even in Google Translate, it's got the comma there very clearly. Let's have a bit of fun with that. Let's put it into Latin. Qui erat et est et qui est. You see a lot of that type of stuff in the Latin. Anyway, I'll actually search for this term. 1992. I'm hoping to get something very old, but anyway, 1958. Maybe he's got a translation of it. Okay, let's go a bit bigger. Somenos. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's got the translation there, but I could be wrong. So it just looks like that's the Greek. So what I'm looking for is just a bit of an alternate translation, because TurretinFan's sort of insisting that it's it reads, shall be blessed. Okay, that looks very complicated. Okay. Anyway, very interesting. Well, I don't know about that website, but it looks pretty wild. So sorry if I'm boring you with the end of the video. I just want to, maybe what I should do is cut out some of it. So we'll just have the Christ section, because sometimes it can just be a difference in one letter and it can totally throw you off. So we want to keep the blessed part in there. So let's say keep those words. Okay, so yeah, same books, I think. Milne, that might be the one to go to. Okay, so it just looks like a Greek document. Yeah, so there's no translation offered there. But maybe just to, or maybe what I'll do is I'll just grab like that and we'll see if there's any alternatives. The baptism of Christ. Okay, so I'm up the top there, KJV Today. Or maybe we should look at what KJV Today actually says about this section. Oh, I hate that site there. That's the one that got ripped off, and they just put ads and a whole bunch of other rubbish. If you go .net with that, you get to the original site. Okay, so Revelation 16:5. Okay, so church father usage of Kaiho Osomenos. So this is the thing. It's like we're looking at this section, Kaiho Osomenos, not just like, oh, everything else has to be all in order. Like if I was doing a study on monogenes theos, okay, for example, and just say James White said, well, monogenes theos, it appears in Origin, it appears in his other work and all that. I mean, yeah, you can point out that, like, oh, hang on, James, it says, the only begotten God who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him, or doesn't have the word bosom there, so, or it doesn't have the word declared there, or doesn't, and it's okay to point those things out, but that's not like throw it all out. It doesn't have the reading. It's clearly, yeah, KJV Today he says there are at least two church fathers who use the phrase hosomenos as a reference to a person of the Godhead. This is noteworthy because the Greek New Testament never uses the phrase hosomenos to refer to God outside of Revelation 16:5, as it appears in Bezer. Christ in Revelation elsewhere is referred to as Erchomenos, who is to come. Clement of Alexandria refers to God as hosomenos. So we went through that And then we're going through Gregory of Nyssa. And so he has, and verily the adorner of the bride is Christ, who is and was and shall be blessed now and forever. Amen. Note, in certain internet forums, these facts have been called a red herring to the issue of whether homosomenos should be in Revelation 16:5. By definition, a red herring is something that is not relevant to the issue and carries a probative value. If a hypothesis is made more likely by the existence of a fact than by the absence of a fact, that fact is not a red herring. The fact that Greek fathers used hot esomenos is not a red herring, because the facts suggest that the future participle of imi in reference to Christ is not a novel invention in the 16th century Western European scholar, a novel of a 16th century Western European scholar, with proof of an ancient native Greek usage of hot esomenos. The hypothesis that John used the term is made more likely. The weight to place on this evidence is debatable, but it is a misnomer to call it a red herring. Okay, so that's a really good point. And the thing is, that's exactly what TurretinFan's is doing. He's saying this is not evidence. So the exact reading that we're trying to defend here, that the reading of hot esomenos is related to God, and the exact reading, if you translate it into English, it reads exactly as the King James, who is and was and shall be. So even in the order of the other chiastic structure, where it's like the present, the past, and the future, it's got that in it as well. But clearly it's saying homosomenos, where it's not, nowhere else in the New Testament does it call Christ the homosomenos. Okay. So this is important. This is something that people need to know about. But TurretinFan's sort of saying it's unimportant and people don't need to know about it. But let me just keep reading through my material here. So where are we? Looking for my, there it is. So Gregory of Nyssa clearly said Jesus is who is and was and shall be. But what's amazing to me is TurretinFan is just saying and shall be blessed. So that it's not talking about, the eternality. It's not talking about a structure that is related to Jehovah. Now, that might be an interesting thing to actually look at, the exact phrase. I might just look at that and see if there's anyone's explained this. Nope. Okay, so let's just go to translate. And we'll just look at this. It's not really playing the game. Un and prune and being. Okay, so maybe I can go for un. So I wonder what that. This word here. Let's just check it out. Buthos prune, the monogenes, arche. Just looking for other usages. Anyway, that's something I can do in my spare time. Sometimes I forget that I'm live here and I'll just start studying. I'm not even talking or anything. Wow, this looks like a very old book. With a translation. That's interesting. Okay, so let's just open that up a little bit. It's not even the same word. It's ruin. Yeah, I don't think it's the same word. So anyway, I'm rabbit trailing too far. But yeah. So yeah, James White simply said no Christian had ever read the text that way. The KJV has it today. Okay, well, Gregory of Nyssa, 335 to 395. So before 400, just translate what he said into English, and you got the King James reading of Revelation 16:5 there. So White, although he has been shown several of these examples before, has simply shrugged them off and claimed the reading has no evidence, and those who think so are deceived. And that's what James White clearly says, and has said about me, warned people to stay away from me just because of this stuff. Like, not because, I'm committing adultery or because I'm woke or, no, because of this. Amazing. Anyway, so that's a really small one. So I'll just let TurretinFan continue a little bit, but I'm pretty sure he's just jumping on to the next one. But maybe what I'll do, let's just see his conclusion again here. Now that you've listened to me, listen to him talk about, the blessed thing. And okay, listen to this.
But it does not provide a witness of the Beza reading at Revelation 16:5.
What does then? If you've translated this into English and it says who is and was and shall be, which basically is which art and wast and shalt be. It's exactly the same as King James. If this is not relevant, what is? What is relevant
then? I see. Patrick, I wonder if you're thinking of, well, I'm just going to leave that off for now. I'm getting distracted. Let me focus on Nick's point here. All right. So Nick concludes that section with this statement. He says, so White, although he has been shown several of these examples before, has simply shrugged them off and claimed the reading has no evidence, and those who think so are deceived. I can't say whether someone's deceived or not, but I can tell you that this isn't evidence of Revelation 16:5 having a different reading.
So it reads exactly the same as Theodore Beza's manuscript has. It reads exactly the same as the King James.
Greg, there's no reason to think from this that Gregory of Nyssa had a copy of Revelation and that his copy of Revelation had and shall be.
So why is it who is and was and shall be, and not who was and is and shall be? Why is it exactly Revelation 16:5?
There. It's not, he's not quoting Revelation 16:5 here.
Okay, so because he's using a different Greek word, but it has the vast majority of it is exactly the same. Okay, and this means the same. So it equals the same thing. It equals and was. Okay.
He's saying who is and was and shall be blessed.
He's not saying that. If that was the case, the comma would be after blessed and not before it.
That's what he's saying. And therefore, it's not a quotation from Revelation 16:5. Not only
it's exactly what it reads at Revelation 16:5 in the King James.
is the middle verb different,
Okay, so the middle word's different, so it doesn't mean it then. And it's to me, this is just an amazing, just wave your hand and this will disappear. No. You've got to at least accept that this is evidence for Revelation 16:5. It's the exact reading. I mean, what else can I say?
But it's not, these aren't being used as nouns. So I'm not sure what else to add here. This is just wrong. I mean, as an evidence of Revelation 16:5, it's wrong. Its value in the overall cumulative case is pretty low.
Just, pretty low. The reading is which art and wast and shall be. So you translate this, who is and was and shall be. But this is just not evidence for Revelation 16:5 at all. It's just for something else. Because TurretinFan has a presupposition that it's the wrong reading. So let's just wave our hand like that and this will disappear and say it's not relevant when it's the exact reading of the King James when translated.
It would really only be useful to get someone who says it's improper to say that Christ shall be. And then you'd say, well, aha, what do you know? Listen to Gregory of Nyssa, he says Christ shall be blessed. And if Christ shall be blessed, then that means that Christ shall be, because you can't be blessed if you're not being. But in any event, let's continue on. So 3.6, Priscillian of Avila. Now, this is not necessarily a work that's on everybody's lips. And
okay, so I'm going to stop it there. So I'm going to hide that. We're at the 24-minute 37 mark of part 13. So I'm pretty much just halfway there. We're at 3.6, Priscillian of Avila. And I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for joining us, guys. God bless you. And we'll continue this on another time. So I've gone for nearly 3 hours. So that's quite a fair chunk to go through. And then I'll probably have just one more video in this section. And then I haven't even listened to the latest one that was done today. Haven't had time yet. So I'll listen to that, and then I'll be fully caught up. So I'm hoping to catch up, because there's nothing worse than being weeks behind, months behind, and you're trying to deal with things that you feel like you've dealt with them, but you realize that you're dealing with an old video and you have to put your mindset back a month, and it can drive you crazy. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. May Jehovah, which art and wast and shall be, bless you, and may you come to the conclusion that we have all the words of God. We don't have to go scrounging around for all the words somewhere in a cave or in the sands of Egypt somewhere. We have the words of God with us today. And so go and enjoy reading those. Go and read the book of Revelation. It's amazing. Okay, God bless you, and we'll see you another time.